Hey everyone, I'm Multi. I finally decided to write a Bionicle story. This one tells the tale of a Toa Mata team with the designation Y. After the original Toa Mata team, designated X, washed ashore on Mata Nui following a long journey at sea, a backup team, Mata Y, was activated. Their mission was to awaken the Bohrok and eventually unite with the original Toa Mata to defeat Makuta. The challenge was that they had to operate in complete secrecy, so Makuta wouldn't know that it wasn't just 6 Toa coming for him, but 12. This story expands on the original Toa Mata storyline as seen in MNOG and the book Tale of the Toa. My English isn't very good, so if you find any mistakes or think a sentence could be phrased better, please let me know. I'll be happy to fix it. I'm also looking forward to your comments after reading. Constructive criticism is very welcome. Thanks to Google Translate. I couldn't get the names to sound right in the voiceover, so here's an example of how they're actually pronounced.
Леса, Спиритус, Али, Вольтер, Крах, Асолту, Сороки, Кайварис.
6 Beyond Legends, a fan novel in the Bionicle universe by Alexei Makarov 2025. Disclaimer: this is an unofficial fan work set in the Bionicle universe, the rights to which belong to the LEGO Group. The author is not affiliated with or a representative of LEGO and claims no rights to the original characters, names, locations, or concepts created by the company. All canonical Bionicle elements are used solely for non-commercial purposes out of respect and love for the original story. Copyright for the unique characters, plot lines, dialogues, and artistic design of this work belongs to the author. After the Toa Mata X team departed for the island of Mata Nui to track down and destroy Makuta, the decision was made to activate the reserve team, Mata Y, to assist and support the main forces. They arrived without making a sound, covertly, beneath the earth. At their head was Espiritus, the Toa of Weather, clad in armor the color of storm clouds. Behind her moved the elegant and deadly Lee, wielder of plasma, with a weapon resembling a thin, long rifle. Cheerful yet cunning Elsa, the Toa of Vegetation, whose vines were as dangerous as her temperament. With them stood Vildar, the formidable and charismatic Toa of Energy, whose eyes crackled with lightning. Esldu, the Toa of Sound, was the merry prankster with a voice capable of toppling walls. And finally, the silent smith Krah, the Toa of Forging, a white and gold giant bearing the runes of ancient craft. Shadows under the island, they moved through a narrow tunnel, dark, damp, and steeped in ancient silence. What is this place? Lee's voice echoed, as if the cave itself was reluctant to let strangers in. A dungeon, probably, Esldu replied, glancing around. Or something worse. What do you think, Espiritus? The maps indicate several exits, she answered quietly but confidently. One leads to the coast, 2 others to the surface. It's quite possible there are hidden paths into the cave system as well. And you're sure the Mata X haven't come down here before? Vildar swung his sword, faint sparks trailing from the blade. A few small spiders, startled by the energy discharge, quickly scrambled up their web to the ceiling. I'm sure, if they were here, they left no trace. Let's hope they at least reached the Matoran as a team, muttered Krah. Not one by one. Tahu definitely won't be gone alone. Same for Kopaka, Lee remarked. After the failure in their transport, they might not even remember each other, Espiritus said, her voice colder now. Which means, Krah added, they might be forgotten their mission, too. Exactly. We're here to remind them, if necessary. And to stop the darkness. Elsa, don't fall behind, Lee called as she nimbly jumped over a narrow ledge. The heel of her armored boot scraped a rock. I'm not falling behind, Elsa scoffed. It's you and your fancy shoes that are about to trip. They're not shoes, they're aesthetics, Lee replied with dignity. In a cave, Vildar snorted. Aesthetics, sure, I'll remember that. You're just jealous you don't have heels. I only envy your ability to fire plasma without incinerating all of us, he grinned. Also, brighten your mask a little, would you? Hard to see where we are going, and Elsa's flower is about to wilt. Not the first time she's been called out for her looks, right Elsa? Hey, Elsa playfully shoved him. I'm a Toa of plant life. I have to look good. I'm allowed 1 flower. The whip on your belt already draws enough attention, Esldu smiled. It's a vine. It's a whip. Don't lie to yourself, Vildar said with a smirk. Leave me alone, she huffed. Though honestly, I feel bad for our enemies. Getting beaten by a vine, perverts, Esldu shook his head. Speaking of enemies, Espiritus, who are we likely to encounter? Reports mention Nuajaga, giant scorpions, Nuirama, dragonflies and wasps with stingers, ash bears, Kikanalo, Muaka, a cat, and Kane Ra, a bull, Tarakavas. And that's just the big ones. Imagine how many insects there are. So we'll have to fight cats. Aslaldu crossed his arms. Great. Unlikely. They're loners and tend to avoid outsiders unless you invade their territory. Are we sure we haven't invaded it? Not yet, Crawh. But down here, something else is far more dangerous, the lair of Makuta and the island's defense mechanism. What other mechanism? The creatures, half asleep, but still active. They resemble bugs and possess elemental powers. Bugs. That's my thing, Elsa smiled. There are plenty of them in the jungle. Picture this, Elsa. One of them is your height and stronger, and there are hundreds of them. Yikes. Exactly. I've heard there's a Rao mask that lets you speak to Rahi. But even that won't help if you're facing an army. And they have one, led by queens. Then why aren't they protecting the island from Makuta? That's not their purpose, said Espiritus. Something happened on the island. Like the balance of nature has been disturbed. Too quiet, Crawh muttered, resting his hand on his sword's hilt. Like something is watching us from the dark. I've heard a legend, said Aslaldu, about Mata Nui. There was an archive full of creatures. One day someone released them, and it was chaos. Spiders with claws, the size of a house, Vildar added. Lovely fellows. Enough with the scare stories, Elsa grumbled. Those are just tales. Right, Espiritus. Maybe they are, she nodded. But where there's smoke, there's fire. We have to be ready for anything. Light ahead, Lee shouted. Just a few more turns and we'll be out. Is that already the cave's exit? Vildar asked hopefully. No, Espiritus smiled slightly. Even better, we'll take a lift to the surface. At least it's not through a spider lair, Aslaldu muttered. I hope. The darkness receded, revealing a vast hall before the Toa. The ceiling was lost in shadow. Smooth walls, as if carved by ancient machines, held the silence of centuries. The air was dense and muffled, and it felt as though the very stone was watching them. The Toa paused at the entrance, peering into the half-light. Cozy, Aslaldu muttered, his voice swallowed by a heavy echo. This place is ancient. Crawh whispered, slowly looking around. I feel traces of energy, mechanisms, hidden but live, just behind these walls, in the corridors. Smells like dust and rust, Lee snorted. So inspiring. Elsa ran her fingers along the wall, and instantly, a tiny vine sprouted beneath her hand, only to fall onto the smooth stone floor. Even nature can't take root here. This place is like it's in a deep sleep. In the center of the hall stood a strange column. Smooth, dark, with a metallic sheen, it was surrounded by circular segments on the floor. A single lever stuck out from its side. Espiritus stepped forward. Follow me, she ordered firmly, but moved cautiously, measuring each step. The Toa obeyed, each glancing around, as if sensing something in this hall was breathing, hidden, unseen, but, as Crawh rightly noted, live. Is that a lift? Vildar asked, eyeing the column with interest. Or a trap? We'll find out, Espiritus said calmly. She raised her hand, and with slight effort, pushed the lever upward. A hum, deep, prolonged, like waking a sleeping titan. The rings on the floor, separate plates, began to rise with a clang, each under one of the Toa. Wait, I'm moving, Elsa exclaimed as her platform started to ascend. It's a single-person lift. Aslaldu laughed. Classy. The platform spread out, lifting each Toa on their own slab. The stone trembled beneath their feet, but the mechanism worked with eerie precision. Hold on, Espiritus shouted, standing on her own plate. The cave's darkness gave way to light from above. Thick, warm air replaced the tunnel's cold dampness. With each meter, the ascent felt swifter, and finally, the slab stopped with a soft click. Before the Toa, an entirely new sight unfolded. They found themselves in a small clearing, surrounded by wild, dense jungle on one side and steep, sheer cliffs on the other. The tree canopies merged into a sea of green, from which came birdsong, the rustling of leaves, and a host of sounds, from the chirping of insects to distant animal cries. Everything was live, everything was in motion. Ooh, Elsa sighed, breathing deeply. Now this is home. She stepped forward, letting the sunlight glide over her bright green armor. As if in response, vines and vibrant flowers sprouted instantly at her feet. One flower, almost instinctively, curled a root around her arm and climbed onto her shoulder. She smiled. Just look at this, she whispered. The soil is live here, bathed in sunlight. Perfect. I can feel the roots of hundreds of plants running through it. I hope you're not planning to settle down here, Vildar teased, stepping closer. We do have a mission, remember. Oh, let me enjoy the perfect conditions for just a moment, Elsa replied slyly, glancing over her shoulder at him. I'm sure you'll love this place. I wouldn't be so sure, Vildar started, only to feel green roots wrap around his legs. He tried to step back but instantly fell, and before he could react, colorful flowers had already bloomed across the vines twining around his armor. Everyone burst out laughing. All right, save the jungle romance for when we get back, Kra-H quipped, adjusting his weapon. Right now, we need to figure out where to go. Agreed, said Espiritus, stepping to the center of the group with her twin glowing blades crossed on her back. We need to locate Team Mata X. Any ideas? Kra-H thought aloud. Maybe they followed their elemental instincts and headed to local settlements. But we can't go there, Espiritus added grimly. Our mission is stealth. I've got an idea. We split up and Vildar began, but was immediately cut off. Ezltu raised a hand. Quiet. Everyone froze. Even Elsa stopped shifting the plants at her feet. The birds in the canopy kept singing. Wine swept across the cliffs and rustled into the jungle, but something had changed. Listen, Ezltu said again, his tone serious. They listened. Silence. Not complete, but different. The jungle still spoke in many voices, but the low frequencies are gone, Ezltu whispered. No heavy footsteps. No growls. You mean, we are being watched? Vildar tensed, his hand going to the hilt of his sword, which immediately sparked to life. Not sure, Ezltu replied. But the sound feels frozen, like right before a strike. I don't like this, Espiritus murmured. It feels like the jungle itself is holding its breath. She looked up, the clouds were beginning to thicken, slowly, as if responding to her unease. Then we move. Fastly said firmly. Someone or something knows we're here, and I don't want to meet them. That path there, Elsa pointed to a narrow, green corridor barely visible among the dense foliage. It runs along the cliffs. Might lead to a village or at least signs of civilization. Or a beast's den, Kra-H muttered, checking his blade. We can't go near civilization anyway. Whatever's out there, we ready, Vildar said, looking at Espiritus. Right, she nodded. But stay alert. Danger can hide even in the calmest place. The Toa fell silent, focusing on the slightest movements, surrounded only by the sounds of the jungle. Bird song, insect chatter, and something else. Then it burst forth. The bushes ahead exploded outward, scattering in all directions as a massive beast erupted from within. It was huge, its body clad in thick, fused armor plates. Instead of back legs, it had a giant caterpillar-like lower body, sliding across the earth with a crunch and grind. Its claws, each the size of a Toa's head, clenched, tearing a trench into the ground. Back! Espiritus shouted, raising her swords. But it was too late. With a wild roar, the creature lunged, slammingly to the ground. Its neck shot forward, and Toa of Plasma found herself face to face with a massive maw lined with jagged fangs. No! Kra-H leapt at the beast's head, and in a flash, a protosteel brace formed in his hands. With a fierce lunge, he jammed it between the monster's upper and lower jaws. The beast howled in frustration. Its maw froze, muscles tensed, metal joints groaned. But then it jerked its head, flinging the iron wedge aside as if it were nothing, a dull metallic thud marking its flight. So what do we do now? Kra-H exhaled. This Rahi, Elsa whispered. Something's wrong with it. Vildar and Espiritus dashed to opposite sides, firing short bursts of energy and lightning into the ground, trying to draw its attention away from Lee, who was still down. Lee, crawl back, Elsa shouted, charging forward. I'll cover you. The beast growled, its head turning toward Ezltu, eyes glowing red. In a heartbeat, the monstrous maw opened wide with a terrifying roar, its neck launching forward like a harpoon. At the same instant, vines shot from Elsa's hands, lashing around the creature's head like green whips. It slowed the lunge, but the momentum was too great. Elsa was pulled off her feet, crashing hard into the creature's armored shoulder. She didn't notice that her impact knocked loose a glowing, colorful fragment from its armor. It hit the ground with a heavy clang. Ezltu unleashed a low-frequency sonic pulse at the creature's head, but just then, it jerked violently. Its eyes flickered yellow, then red again. For a moment, it hesitated, then resumed spinning and thrashing, claws carving up the earth as it tried to grab the Toa. Espiritus watched closely, sparks still flickering across the beast's armored spine. From a ruptured plate on its side, something shimmered beneath, another fragment like the one Elsa had accidentally knocked off. Lee, she said softly, stepping closer. Can you hit that second colored element? Just carefully, minimum power. Breathing heavily, Lee nodded silently. She pulled a long rifle from behind her back. Resting her elbows on the ground, she aimed, held her breath, and the shot, a thin, almost silent crack, passed through the rising dust. The plasma charge, barely glowing, hit the detail on the creature's shoulder. The multicolored fragment flew off to the side and disappeared into the underbrush. At that moment, the creature abruptly calmed down, its massive body crashing heavily to the ground. The Toa carefully stepped closer. The creature no longer growled. It breathed, heavily, irregularly. Its chest rose and fell. Its eyes, the ones that had been burning with rage moments ago, now glowed with a warm yellow light, and there was no more fury in them. The creature looked around anxiously at the small ones around it. Who were they? They didn't smell like prey. Why were they here? Where am I? He's afraid, whispered Elsa, cautiously stepping forward. The creature barely moved its head, slowly looking at the circle of 6 Toa standing around it. It snorted. Elsa raised her hands, and green energy flowed into the ground. From beneath the beast, huge leaves began to grow from the soil, soft and wide like cushions. So it would be softer for him, Elsa said with a light smile. Espiritus watched the creature closely, analyzing its every move. We've knocked out 2 controlling elements. It looks like they were suppressing its will. Maybe it didn't even understand what it was doing. She glanced at the strange details lying in the grass. We'll need to ask Artaka. He could figure out what this technology is. But for now, she turned to the team. It's better to leave it for now. I'm sure it will come to its senses. The Toa stepped back from the creature, one by one. Elsa was the last to leave, still feeling the beating heart of the massive monster through the leaves and grass. At the last moment, Elsa made the nearby trees cover the beast with foliage from the scorching sun. The whole team headed deeper into the jungle, disappearing among the leaves. And somewhere behind them, in the shadow and greenery, the creature lay quietly, breathing, settled on a soft bed, free and live. Heavy drops of dew slid off the broad leaves, melting into the dense, ever-whispering forest. The Toa Mata moved silently through the green curtains, as if dissolving into the foliage. Each step was measured, each movement soundless. Above them, a swarm of insects hummed, and in the distance, the roar of Arachi echoed. The world was live, but uneasy. Espiritus led the way. She raised her hand, signaling the others to stop. A light gust of wind parted the bushes in front of her. The main thing is not to make noise, she whispered. Esl, do you hear anything? Yes, Espiritus, said the Toa of Sound. I hear music and cheerful songs in the distance. Are you serious? Espiritus asked, surprised. Yes, and I'd love to join them, Esl replied confidently. Lee followed behind, keeping her rifle ready. Her eyes quickly scanned the shadows. Do you think they'll take us for enemies? She whispered. We're Toa just like them. Vildar, like a shadow, appeared at her shoulder. We're strangers, and that's enough for them, he said calmly. Don't forget, Makuta can twist the truth however he wants. It's better to stay invisible. Elsa moved silently, as though she knew the language of the branches and roots beneath her feet. Lua, keep an eye on the air, she said. A gust of wind, and he'll get suspicious. We have to be like predators, we need to lie in wait. Behind them, Esl let out a quiet snort, muttering. How much longer are we going to observe? We know Makuta is somewhere nearby. Why not join the other Toa? Elsa gently pushed aside a vine that had caught on her armor and turned around. Because we don't know where they all are. And we don't know what's going on. If we interfere without a plan, we give Makuta a chance. He won't miss it. But we'd have fun with those cheerful guys, Esl countered. Vildar smiled at his friend. We'll have time for that later. Right now, we need to stick to the mission. Artaka will be displeased if we act off task. What are our tasks? Lee asked. Well, we came across a strange Rakshi, or rather, its behavior. By the way, who was that? Vildar asked in surprise. Muaka, a big cat, lives in both jungles and snow. A beautiful creature, Elsa said. Why did it attack us? Kraich asked, surprised. That's exactly what I want to find out. Remember what happened when Elsa knocked that colorful piece off, the one that looked like a Kanoe mask? Yeah. Elsa rubbed her bruised shoulder. The creature hesitated, Espiritus continued. And when Lee knocked off the second piece, the creature calmed down and fell, as if drained of strength. Elsa looked back, concerned, in the direction from which they had come. It was afraid. I could feel it, she said. Strange situation. SB Ritus concluded. I suggest we keep track of different animals. Lee proposed. If we split into pairs, we'll quickly figure out the cause. Good idea, Lee. Noted the toe of atmosphere. But we won't be able to keep watch over the Rakshi. We need to handle other tasks too, including the main one, tracking the Toa Mata X. Then we can go together. Elsa began enthusiastically. I'll track them using my sharp hearing and knowledge of the jungle, and Lee will knock off those strange masks. I like this idea. Lee nodded. All right, the two of you should figure out the cause of the strange behavior and figure out what these pieces have to do with it. Kra H and I will head back to the cave. We need to find where the Bohrok sleep. Kra H gave an annoyed look toward the distance, as if through the trees. Who are the Bohrok? They're the very bugs, Esl do. SB Ritus replied. Very dangerous. They protect the island and are supposed to clear anything they deem unnecessary for the awakening of Mata Nui. But for some reason, they're inactive. They shouldn't have allowed construction on the island, Crouch said firmly. And they certainly shouldn't have allowed such vegetation and mountains to appear. Yes, the toe of atmosphere continued. We need to figure out their programming and, if possible, activate them. It will be hard to explain to the Matoran why some bugs are going to destroy their settlements, and yet they're doing it right. Elsa, besides the Matoran, there are Duraga here. And if the Matoran have forgotten their past after those capsules they were told about, the Duraga should know the truth. The clouds thickened over the jungle, and a strong wind rustled through the leaves. Eslaldu listened intently. I don't like this growing sound. It's like thousands of drums beating simultaneously and out of sync on something hollow. SB Ritus activated her powers and, changing the pressure beneath her, rose just above the treetops. A horrible sight unfolded before her. From the direction of Mount U, several dozen Nuirama were flying toward them. SB Ritus quickly descended back to the ground. Behind the trees, quickly. The whole team scattered, hiding behind trees that swayed slightly in the wind. Lee pressed herself to the ground into the thick grass. Elsa practically melted into the vegetation, simply running to the nearest bushes. In a second, a massive swarm of insects, each the size of a toa, flew overhead. These Rakshi had huge jaws, sharp claws on powerful legs, and their entire appearance was completed by a long and powerful stinger. The moonlight reflected in their eyes, and they were focused ahead, not seeing the heroes, not even searching for them. When the last insect flew by, the toa emerged from their hiding spots. Where do you think they're going? I don't know, Elsa. SB Ritus replied nervously. But it seems like they have a goal. In another case, they would be noticed us. These Rakshi have excellent sharp vision. Trees are not much of an obstacle for them. They wouldn't have noticed me. Elsa chimed in cheerfully. I'm one with the leaves. Don't underestimate them. They live here and know the terrain. Eslaldu raised his hand, signaling everyone to be quiet. But even those who weren't connected to sound as much as he was could hear the distant cries carried by the wind from deep within the jungle. Matoran? Lee asked anxiously. SB Ritus strained her ears, listening to the wind's noise. I hear sounds of a battle, Eslaldu said. I hear clear orders, telling everyone what to do. It's one voice, I can't make out the words, but it's confident though concerned. Lua, SB Ritus suddenly said. We need to go there. What about the plan not to be seen? Kra H asked. We have to help. We'll figure out the stealth later. SB Ritus snapped back. Follow me. The whole team ran in the direction from where the cries and the sounds of battle were coming. The battle for Lakoro. The thick treetops shuddered from the ominous hum approaching from the northern ridge. The winds became restless as the shadows of Nuirama flew through the sky like a swarm of poisonous arrows. Through the foliage, standing on a rise, Toalua gazed at the horizon. His Kanoi Mairu, the mask of levitation, softly glowed, and in his hand, he gripped his axe. The hum filled the air, rhythmic, predatory. The swarm of Nuirama descended like a black cloud, blocking out the light. Their transparent wings rang like taut strings, and every shadow between the leaves could be the start of an attack. On one of the platforms, 3 Matoran, Afa, Borei, and Kongu, hastily untied the ropes from the railings to ready the Gecko birds for battle. If we launch them now, they won't be able to attack from above. Afa shouted, tightening the straps. We need to release at least 2. Lua will distract them, and we'll flank them. Borei yelled into the wind, glancing upwards. Kongu had already jumped onto the nearest Gecko, tapping it on the neck. But in the next moment, as if the wind itself had learned of their plans, Lua appeared before them. No, he roared. No takeoffs. But we could. It's too dangerous. Lua's voice was confident and powerful like a hurricane. They hunt both in the sky and in the forest. One attack in the sky, and the birds will be gone. You'll doom them. Kongu clenched his fists but didn't argue. He knew Lua was right. A sharp screech tore through the air, and the first Nui Rama drove into the treetops, breaking the leaves and branches. Matoran Vira skillfully launched a disc, and a metallic clang rang out as the attacking creature lost its balance, crashing into the trunk. Good shot, Lua shouted, and activating Kanoi Mairu, he pushed off the ground and soared into the air. With a cry, 3 Nui Rama dove downward, swooping directly at the platform. Lua charged forward, spinning his X, and in the next second, steel met Chitan. Impact. Sparks flew, and a crackling sound echoed. One of the Rahi collapsed, its wings broken. Back. Toa shouted, diving under the claws of the second, embedding the huge blade in its chest. Quickly, to the higher platforms. Lua. Tamaru exclaimed. There are too many. They're flanking us. I'll hold them off. Toa barked, leaping onto the railing, where one Nui Rama tried to grab a Matoran by the shoulder. A swing of his axe sent the creature reeling, bleeding dark green fluid. The platform shook under the force of the wind. Leaves were ripped from the canopy as if the trees themselves were trying to flee from the oncoming terror. Between the rope bridges, the wings of Nui Rama flashed, and their eyes burned like bright stars. Meanwhile, on another platform, Vira and Shu were fending off the next wave. Their Kanoka discs sliced through the air, leaving ringing arcs behind. One disc struck the wing of a Nui Rama. It shrieked, began to fall but managed to cling to a vine with its claws. Shu, left. Vira shouted, throwing another disc. Shu turned and, with a precise motion, sent the Rahi spinning in the air. Tamaru stood next to Makani, both launching discs in synchronized trajectories honed by practice. Keep your distance. Makani shouted, his voice drowned by the wind. If they get too close, we won't be able to fend them off. I see it. Tamaru cried. On the side, right near the hut, he hurled a disc, and it struck the face of a Nui Rama with a dull thud. The Rahi spun in the air and disappeared into the treetops, tearing through the leaves. Behind them, Afa's shout rang out. They're coming from below. Their claws are cutting into the wood. Everyone to the upper levels. Lua cried, deflecting another attacker. Move higher, through the vines. Quickly. One by one, the Matoran began climbing higher. Below, the sound of cracking wood could already be heard. The Nui Rama were breaking the platform they had just stood on. At that moment, a new wave erupted from the trees. 6 of them. Claws gleaming, they rushed forward, knowing their target. Kongu. Lua shouted. The net. Now. The Matoran jumped to a lever, and with a rustling sound between the trees, the net unfolded, knocking 2 Nui Rama off course. One of them clung to the net, screeching and thrashing. Right into the trap. Kongu shouted. Nice. Tamaru yelled, jumping away from the third. Its claws scraped his mask, knocking it aside. He staggered. They're too fast. Lua lunged forward, grabbing his axe with both hands and slammed it into the enemy, sending it crashing down with a loud roar. Hold on, Tamaru. He stood between his friends and the approaching swarm. His body etched from the wounds, his breathing ragged. They won't take Lakoro. One of the Nui Rama slammed into him with full force, throwing him backward. Lua hit a wooden support, but quickly rose again. His Kanoi Mairu glowed. Again, impact. The blade of his axe sank into the paw of the enemy. Don't stand exposed. Lua shouted to the Matoran. Use the foliage as cover. Attack the wings, not the body. Confirmed. Tamaru responded decisively. Let's attack. A sweep of his hand, and another Nui Rama fell with a dull thud as a Kanoka disc struck its body. All right, you're not the only ones who can fly. Lua's Kanoi Mairu flared with a soft green glow, and Toa Lua soared into the air. The battle raged in the sky. Lua maneuvered between the trees, his axe slicing through the air, striking the wings of Nui Rama, knocking them down one by one. Every maneuver was precise, each movement a dance with the wind. He climbed higher, calling forth gusts that threw the enemies off course. Several Nui Rama feigned retreat before suddenly turning and diving into a head-on attack. Lua reacted instantly, but the massive insect knocked him off course, grazing his mask. I didn't like that, Lua said. How about this? Toa spread his arms wide and began rising actively, forming a hurricane around himself. He soared upward as if born of the storm itself. The air whistled, leaves ripped off the trees. A dozen dark silhouettes rose into the air, forming a ring. Like one team, the monsters spun in the opposite direction, their wings beat in rhythm, distorting Lua's wind. Two elements collided. In a moment, the wind streams collided, Lua's whirlwind and the anti-whirlwind of Nuirama met, and the world lost its balance. Toa spun, losing control. The space became disoriented, his axe slipped from his grasp. He made a move to steady himself, but it was useless. The force of nature turned against him. In that moment, through the swirling winds and roaring, he caught a strange glow. A dozen murky blue eyes, bright, almost glowing. They were coming, rushing like lightning, straight toward him. Lua could only squint, and in the next moment, a clawed paw swept across his face, knocking his Kanoe Mairu off. The Kanoe spiraled through the air, disappearing into the leaves below. A sudden emptiness filled his mind. No, without his mask, the power left him, and his body became heavy. Lua could no longer control his flight, he was falling. He suddenly remembered a joke Matau had told one evening, a toe of air without their power can fly, but only down. Through the dense foliage, breaking branches, his body was tossed like a ragdoll. Every impact echoed in his body with a dull clang. The world around him blurred into greenery and flashes of pain. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was the cry of a Matoran, somewhere in the distance. Lua. He saw the swarm rush over the jungle. His eyes closed. The thick canopies of the trees trembled from the swarm of insects buzzing through the air. The Toa Mata rushed swiftly across the damp foliage, making their way through the jungle, guided by the echoes of a distant battle. At the front ran Elsa, using the power of nature. The trees parted their branches to clear her path. Behind her was Espiritus, her daggers ready for battle. The other Toa followed close behind, their armor glinting in the patches of light breaking through the treetops. "We are too late," Esldu whispered, stopping first. A strange, alarming sound rang out above the trees. It was neither singing nor the wind, it was wings. Huge, clashing wings of the Nuirama. Through a gap in the branches, amid a swirl of pollen and debris, the Toa saw a horrifying sight. A black and green swarm of insects raced over the jungle. In the claws of the Nuirama hung limp bodies. One of the Nuirama carried a battered, broken figure in its claws. His armor was scratched, and a massive axe hung from his hand, barely held by his fingers. But worst of all, he had no mask. "Lua," Elsa said in distress, gripping her vine whip so tightly her knuckles turned white. "And the Duraga, and the Matoran," Vildar whispered, squinting into the sky. "They took them too." The swarm of insects quickly disappeared beyond the canopy. No sound came from where Lakoro had once been, only silence. Ominous silence. Lee gripped her rifle, and fire flared in her eyes. "We should be been there earlier. We should be helped. Now's not the time to blame ourselves," said Espiritus, gazing into the sky. "Now's the time to act. We will find them," Esldu said firmly. His voice, amplified by inner sound, rang like a promise. "And we'll bring them back." The Toa Mata stood among the shadows of the trees, in silence broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind. The fading light of day flowed through the treetops like molten gold. The jungle was awash in shades of amber and crimson. The sunset had painted the leaves in fiery hues, as if the trees themselves had ignited from within. The tall thickets seemed live. The wind swayed the vines, and the shadows moved as though something crept within the dense growth. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, wood dust, and blooming streams. Somewhere deep in the forest, a click rang out. Either a predator caught its prey, or the hidden Fiku were playing again. Through the forest loomed the silhouette of a mountain, black, harsh, as if carved from night. Darkness had already fallen upon its slopes, and only the highest peaks still caught the sun's last glimmer. It seemed the mountain stood watch over these lands, ancient and silent. Clicks, rustles, and quiet noises came from the underbrush. The jungle wasn't falling asleep, it was waking up in its own way. Sunset here didn't mean peace. It was a signal. The day was over, and a different realm was beginning, a realm of shadows, claws, and eyes glowing in the dark. Beneath the canopy of a massive tree, among chirring insects and rustling jungle, the Toa Mata spent a long time discussing what had happened. "We have to go after Lua," Vildar said firmly. The argument lasted a long time. "No," Espiritus objected, her voice like the rumble of a thundercloud. "That's madness. There are too many of them. If we all go, we'll break cover. If only you two go, you'll die." "We are not asking permission," Esldu replied calmly but stubbornly. His voice hummed with tension. "We are stating a fact. We are going, we must help. And what exactly will the two of you do against a swarm?" Elsa stepped forward, and the plants around her feet stirred. This isn't a stealth operation. It's suicide. Vildar looked at her calmly, even warmly. Elsa, we know what we are doing. I'm the toe of energy. Azuldu is the toe of sound. We'll leave behind no flash, no echo. We'll find where they're being held. We'll learn if Lua is live. We'll help, and we'll return. Lee spun her rifle in her hand and smirked. You're either too brave or too stupid. Haven't figured out which one yet. Espiritus clenched her fists. The leaves swirled around her. This isn't a plan, it's an impulse. We should stick together. It's logic, Vildar said confidently. Elsa and Lee, you need to go and try to figure out what happened with the Rakshi, right? Their behavior isn't random. Espiritus, you're supposed to investigate the Bohrok, am I right? He stepped closer and placed a hand on Espiritus's shoulder. Trust us. We'll manage. It's not like we've got anything else to do. Espiritus looked away, pressing her lips together. Only gave a grim nod, arms crossed. Fine, she said at last. But if you're not back in 2 days, we are coming after you, with storm and fury. Vildar smiled. Deal. With storm and fury. With those words, the toe of energy and the toe of sound vanished into the green foliage, disappearing as if they were never there. The shadows deepened under the spreading branches. The sun crept slowly toward the horizon, leaving behind bands of ember light sinking into the jungle's screen. The remaining 4 Toa stood in silence. I trust them, Espiritus said, looking in the direction Azuldu and Vildar had just disappeared. But I'm afraid. We are going in blind again, and blindness often leads to loss. Elsa stepped closer and touched her hand. Her voice was soft. We are all afraid, Espiritus. But fear doesn't make us weak, it reminds us there's someone we must protect. Lee checked her rifle's settings, switching it from hand to hand and adjusting the sight to night mode. They'll make it, she said, without looking up. And if not, we'll find them. Espiritus straightened, the steel blades on her back glinting faintly in the twilight. Then listen, she said firmly. And I are going into the cave. The Bohrok are still inactive, that's not normal. We have to find out why. She turned her gaze to Lee and Elsa. You two are heading into the jungle. Something's wrong with the Rakshi. They're not just aggressive, they've gone mad. If there's a way to bring them back to their senses, try to find it. Elsa nodded. We'll handle it. And if anything gets out of control, we'll alert you. Lee slung her rifle over her shoulder and smirked. Promise I won't burn down half the forest. Laughed. Only if you do it with style. Espiritus fell silent for a moment, glancing again toward the cave. The mountain's shadow lay across her face, as if reflecting the fear of making the wrong decision. Azuldu, Vildar, she whispered. Then, louder, move out, and may the power of the Great Spirit be with us. Unexpected allies, the forest whispered like a lurking beast. The air was thick, heavy with moisture and tension. Between the curved tree trunks darted the figure of Vildar, a violet and black silhouette with eyes that flashed like twin bolts of lightning. Behind him walked Azuldu with steady steps, his turquoise armor shimmered among the greenery. We need a plan, Vildar whispered, dodging a hanging vine. We can't handle a whole swarm of Nuirama on our own. I know, Azuldu replied quietly. His voice was calm, but there was a hidden concern in it. We have to warn Onua. Vildar froze, listening to the dull sounds coming from the depths of the jungle. Find him? He asked skeptically. How? These forests are endless, and we're out of time. Azuldu smiled slightly. Onua doesn't need to be found, he'll find us. He has enhanced hearing. One pulse of my sonic wave and he'll hear us, wherever he is. Vildar paused for a moment, then gave a decisive nod. Then, where do we meet him? See that ledge on Mount U? Azuldu pointed ahead. Through a gap in the leaves, a tall stone ridge was visible. There. We'll send the signal and wait. Vildar gripped the handle of his energy blade. All right. But if the Nuirama spot us before that, he smirked, though a spark of tension flickered in his eyes. It'll be fun. It'll be a battle, brother, Azuldu said quietly. But if we save Lua, it'll be worth the risk. Together, silently, they moved forward, through the slumbering jungle, toward the place where fate was already waiting for them. The cave was as ancient as the land itself. Stone arches sank into darkness, and only rare crystals embedded in the walls glimmered with a dim light, like the eyes of ancient guardians watching every step. The air was heavy, damp, filled with rustling and the whisper of the forest. Through this darkness walked Onua. His massive figure nearly blended with the shadows. With each step, the ground beneath him trembled faintly. His heavy, powerful legs moved cautiously, but every movement carried weight that reached deep into the stone. Huge claws, black and slightly curved, glided softly along the tunnel walls as if feeling their way. His armor flickered in the rare glow of the crystals, and in the dark, two emerald lights shone, toe of earth size. Onua stopped. Something had changed. A deep, low sound rolled along the stone ceiling, as if the heart of the earth itself was beating nearby. His massive claws pressed against the stone. The darkness around him seemed even denser. He closed his eyes. The sound pulsed, and within those waves, he felt something familiar, like a foreign voice trying to speak through the very rock. Onua ran his claws along the wall, feeling the vibrations. They were deliberate, created. Someone's calling, he whispered to himself. Lua. The thought struck him like lightning. A heaviness filled his chest. He remembered the green armor, his friend's cheerful laugh, the recklessness and bravery. If something's happened to him, I have to know. Onua took a deep breath. In the darkness, his green eyes flared like twin fires. He turned and stepped forward, toward the source of the call. Whoever you are, Onua muttered, his voice echoing off the walls. I'm coming. I trust the earth, and it tells me to go. A dark ledge on the slope of the high mountain sank into the night. Below, firefly lights twinkled, and in the treetops came a sinister crackling. The Nuirama were awake. Onua walked over moss carefully, almost silently. But suddenly the air thickened around him, filled with a subtle tremor. Two figures emerged from the shadows. One was tall, his armor seeming to shimmer with invisible waves. The air around him vibrated. The other seemed a cluster of energy, violet and black, pulsing, as if woven from light and electricity. Who are you? You're not Matoran, Onua whispered, raising his massive claws. We are not enemies, Toa Onua. My name is Vildar. He slowly raised his palms. I am the Toa of energy. Beside me is Esldu, the Toa of sound. We came on a secret order from Artaka. We know about Lua. Onua tensed. Artaka. I don't know any Artaka. We know that you've forgotten much. Maybe it's a system error, or maybe it's the will of the great beings. Either way, we're here to help. Lua, the Duraga, and the Matoran were captured by the Nuirama. They're somewhere in the hive. There's almost no time left. If you try to break through alone, the insects will tear you apart. We'll distract the swarm, Esldu continued. You'll enter the hive and free him. But no one must know we were here, not even your brothers. Onua was silent for a long time. Then slowly, he lowered his claws. I don't trust strangers. But if you're telling the truth, we have no choice. I'll go underground, distract them, and I'll do the rest. But if this is a trap, you'll be the first to learn what nature's power feels like. Elsa would argue with you, Vildar replied with a smile. Who's Elsa? A restless girl. She's with another Toa named Lee, exploring the jungle. Trying to figure out what's happening to your Rakshi. Onua didn't respond. He turned and walked back toward the cave, then activated his claws and vanished into the ground within seconds. Not worse than a Bohrok, Vildar remarked dryly. Better, replied Esldu with the same optimism. After all, he was a Toa. Esldu and Vildar walked in silence, only the occasional crackle of energy around the violet Toa breaking the oppressive atmosphere. They knew the Nuirama hive was somewhere nearby. The signs on the ground guided them. Deep grooves clawed into the dirt, broken wing fragments, smoldering traces of poisonous slime. At the base of the slope, behind a thick curtain of hanging vines, a dark opening was hidden. A heavy stench of rust and rot hit their faces. They pushed aside the overgrowth and saw the entrance. The cave yawned open as if the mountain itself were a dead maw, ready to swallow them whole. Darkness seeped from within. The walls were covered in claw marks, and a ruined cocoon lay in the corner. Rustling and clicking from countless creatures answered their steps. The main hive is here, Vildar said, with a slight note of concern. He stepped forward, and the swarm exploded. You ready? Sound is a matter of precision, Esldu rasped, activating his combat resonator. I don't like crowds. But the enemies weren't just many, there were far too many. It was as if the cave itself exhaled in rage. The Nuirama swarm surged as one, their wings humming, the buzz echoing through the forest. In the next moment, dozens of bodies rushed downward. The first strike came like a downpour. Dozens of Nuirama dropped from the ceiling. Esldu deployed a sonic dome to repel the attack but barely stayed on his feet. From his shoulders burst a wave of sound, not just thunder, but a vibration that shattered rocks, broke stalagmites, tore insect wings, and forced many rahi to fall. Vildar soared upward, using no wings. Energy carried him forward. He touched the chest plate of one insect with his palm, and it ignited like charred paper, falling apart into burning fragments. His sword, wrapped in an energy spiral, unleashed a discharge. A flash shot through 3 enemies, tearing their armor to pieces. One of the Nuikopen, massive as a Doraga's hut, flew out from the cave's depths. Its pincers were like shields, its shell like obsidian. It let out a piercing roar, and the swarm began to act in unison. "Careful!" shouted Esldu. He struck the ground with his fist, sending out a sonic wave. One Nuirama fell and was immediately crushed by the descending Nuikopen. Several Nuirama lunged at Esldu, claw swinging, trying to sting. The Toa barely dodged. One claw missed his shoulder by a centimeter. He clenched his fists, and the sound was drawn into his body. Everything fell silent, even the insects' buzzing ceased. Silence, then an explosion. Esldu released the stored resonance into a single point, straight into the chest of the massive Nuikopen. A deafening blast sounded, and the creature was thrown back, knocking over its own kin. Meanwhile, Vildar was rising higher, as if flying up an invisible staircase of energy. He extended his hands, his body flared with plasma light, and lightning burst from his fingers, leaping from enemy to enemy. One Nuirama, engulfed in electricity, flew uncontrollably upward until it slammed into a stalactite and shattered. "You're glowing too brightly," shouted Esldu, knocking away 4 enemies at once. "That's the plan," Vildar shouted, his body for a second becoming almost indistinguishable, pure light energy rushing through the swarm. He swept his staff across the ground, lightning surged through roots, stones, even the air. A chain lightning flashed, linking dozens of enemies. Some insects froze, stunned by the current, but there were still too many. Another Nuikopen emerged from the cave and grabbed Vildar by the leg. Energy flared, but not enough. Vildar screamed. Without hesitation, Esldu aimed one of his speakers directly at the enemy and fired a pulse so strong the cliffs crumbled, and the creature froze momentarily. The Nuirama veered off course, colliding midair, and then Esldu clapped his hands. The speakers emitted a resonant hum. The swarm recoiled from the sound, the air trembled. Several Nuikopen staggered and fell, but the others responded with fury, their wings generating a roar that grew stronger, amplified by the cave walls. Esldu closed his eyes, and the vibration reversed. The sound entered his body. His armor trembled slightly. He seemed to absorb the swarm's rage and then released it all in a single impulse. The wave rippled across the cave floor like water. Stones cracked, dozens of Nuirama fell with muffled cries. A massive Nuikopen flew overhead, scraping the walls, and lunged at Vildar. The Toa dodged, flickering with sparks across the stone. He swung his hand sideways, and a stream like a whip struck the insect, slamming it into the rock wall. Its shattered shell cracked, scattering sparks. "Left!" shouted Esldu, his voice amplified by a sound wave that knocked 2 more attackers off course. The creature flew straight at Vildar, who spun around, focusing energy into his fists. An explosive burst of brilliant light ripped the insect from the air and flung it upward like a ragdoll. "Watch the overload," Esldu warned. "You'll burn out if you don't pace yourself." "I know," Vildar gritted his teeth. "They're like flies, but with armor and claws." The air trembled, not from sound, but something else. Deeper within the cave, the ground shifted. Stones cracked, and from beneath rose a massive shadow, a figure clad in heavy black armor. Massive, slow, bearing the power of the earth itself. "Onua," Esldu whispered. "It's Onua." And then, from the opposite side of the cave, limping as if broken in several places, came another figure, tall, flexible, the color of fresh leaves. His mask gleamed dully with gray and venom-red patterns. He moved sharply, with jagged gestures, reckless. Vildar squinted. "And that is Lua." They saw Lua step forward, and his massive axe struck Onua with full force. The Toa of Earth took the blow on his claws, not striking back. Lua hit again, and again. Onua stood under the weight of deadly blows from his friend, but he could not respond. "What is he doing?" Esldu shouted. Lua moved furiously. There was no coordination or reason in his motions, as if he wasn't in control of himself. Onua kept stepping back, dodging every strike. "He's acting like a Rakshi," Vildar yelled through the fight. But his next words were drowned out by an explosion. The wall crumbled with a crash. 3 Nuirama had broken through the flank and rushed at the Toa. Esldu reacted first. A wave of concentrated sonic energy struck the ceiling above them, bringing down a cascade of rocks. "Not now," he growled, raising the sound again. "Onua will handle it. We must hold off the rest." Only if Lua doesn't kill him first. Vildar snapped and rushed forward, surrounded by flashes of energy. Vildar barely managed to dodge, and only then did he use teleportation. Vanishing in a flash, he reappeared on the other side of the cave, already charging a burst of energy between his palms. "Hold them off," he shouted, as Ldu stepped forward, and the air vibrated. His body became a source of rhythm, each movement echoing and fracturing the space around. The Nuirama lost coordination, spinning, falling. The roar of battle didn't fade. The cave trembled with bursts of energy and sonic strikes. The winged silhouettes of the Nuirama came from all sides, blindly, fiercely. One was struck down by a sound wave, another burst into flames from Vildar's energy, a third had its path cut off by Azldu collapsing the ceiling onto its head. But the swarm didn't thin. Azldu was breathing heavily. His armor was covered in dust, cracked in places from overload. He looked back. Vildar was still fighting ahead, surrounded by light like a pulsing star in the dark. From his palms, impulses spread, incinerating enemies. One Nuirama tried to strike from behind, but the toe of energy turned too quickly, hitting it with his elbow and slamming it into the wall. "We can't hold much longer," Vildar cried. Azldu tried to answer, but then something happened. Suddenly, the entire swarm turned its attention to one of the dark tunnels. A moment, and they darted off, one after another. Wings buzzed, shadows slid through the cave as if a single mind had given them the command, "Flee." They vanished into the black passages, taking with them fear, aggression, everything, leaving silence. A very loud, very strange silence. What was that? Azldu exhaled, not lowering his hands. Vildar didn't answer. He slowly lowered his sword, still flickering with energy. His gaze was fixed on the dark tunnel where the Rakshi had disappeared. I don't know what that was," Vildar replied. He dropped to his knees, nearly exhausted. Turning once more to the depths of the cave, he saw Lua standing, leaning against a stone wall. The infected mask was gone from his face. Onua stood nearby, handing him the great mask of levitation, the Mairu. He was free. When Lua put on his true mask, it glowed with a bright green light, and then transformed into a komau, the mask of mind control. At that very moment, two new Ikopen burst out of the caves, and several Gukko birds appeared from the jungle. Lua, Onua, Duraga, and the freed Lamatoran climbed onto the Rakshi and soared upward at great speed, rushing toward Lakoro. Onua turned around, trying to spot their two new allies, but saw nothing except the battlefield littered with dozens of destroyed Rakshi. "I'm sure they made it," Onua thought. Azldu, staggering, smiled. "We did it. We helped." "Yes," Vildar whispered, lying down on the cold cave floor. "They're safe. Now what?" Azldu didn't answer. He collapsed next, trying to catch his breath and regain strength. Now only silence surrounded the heroes, and from deep within the cave, a never-ending, monotonous roar echoed. Shadows among the foliage, the black darkness hung between the trees. The mist enveloped each step, and only the faint glow of Lee's rifle flickered under the pale light of two moons. Hundreds of rustlings merged into a single hum, as if the forest itself whispered, breathed, watched. Elsa walked ahead, the undergrowth parting before her, opening the way. Lee followed closely, rifle at the ready. Huge branches full of green leaves hung above them. Somewhere high, a rustling passed by, as if something had leapt from tree to tree. Elsa froze. "Stop," she whispered. "Did you hear that?" "No," Lee answered just as quietly. "Some small Rakshi in the branches above us. Doesn't sound scary," Lee replied confidently. Elsa glanced over her shoulder, squinting in the dark. "Do you think Vildar and Azldu will manage? Do they have a choice? Together, they could stir up the swarm, but stopping it. Could the Nuirama also have changed, like Muaka? Then it's very dangerous," Elsa replied. "As far as I know, they follow Nuikopen, other Rakshi. No one knows why they listen to them, maybe they're afraid, but they follow orders immediately." Elsa stopped at a tree, placed her palm on the bark. "I can feel it. The jungle is telling me that someone has interfered, disturbed the balance, and animals are attacking each other for no reason." The toe of plants withdrew her hand from the tree and looked at her friend, disappointed. "If this continues, they will destroy each other." "I've thought about that," Lee said, stepping closer and holding the rifle with one hand. "When we took out those two parts from the Muaka, it came to its senses and was weakened, remember? Maybe it spent all its strength fighting, not noticing its body was exhausted." "I remember," Elsa replied sadly. "Someone is putting those parts on them." They control their behavior, suppressing their feelings. A sound flew through the mist, dull, raspy, as if someone was struggling with a metal cable. The girls froze. A pair of dim eyes peered out from behind the trees, then disappeared. Animals love freedom, Elsa whispered. They fear us just as much as we fear them. But many seem to be infected with those parts, and if that's the case, it could be deadly for them. Who would want that? Lee asked, surprised. The island has a team of Toa, so the Matoran are under protection. Like Lua. The Toa of Jungles gave Lee a sly look. You're right, Lee replied quietly. He couldn't protect the village, though he was always brave. I saw how Gidraxon trains him. Lua always thinks with a creative approach. I'm convinced he did everything he could to protect the Matoran. Elsa and Lee made their way through the underbrush. At night, the jungle looked different. A light fog had settled on the ground. The leaves were dull, the tree trunks covered with a network of fine cracks, as if the bark had dried out from the heat. The air was dense, filled with the scent of mold. Something's not right here. Elsa slowed her pace. Do you smell that? Are we near a swamp? Lee asked, not lowering her rifle. The barrel moved from side to side, searching for a target in the dark. Maybe. The trees have strange bark, the grass underfoot is sparse. They took a few more steps. Elsa slightly bent under a crooked branch. And suddenly, she froze. She slowly raised her hand, blocking Lee's path. What's wrong? Lee tensed. Elsa stepped back and slowly ran her hand across her face. Her fingers encountered something cold and sticky. She carefully peeled off a thin, almost invisible film from her mask and saw it stretch, glistening in the dim mist. Webbed. Elsa's voice was tense. Lee tensed up. She raised her rifle higher, her gaze darting through the darkness, scanning for silhouettes, roots, trees. Then they saw it. 10 meters away, in the thickest shadow between two massive trunks, 8 eyes appeared all at once. Red, deep, without pupils. They stared at the Toa without blinking. From the darkness emerged many thin, curved legs, like the branches of old trees. They slowly lowered to the ground, one after another, silently. The black shape of the spider was taller than the girls and seemed even larger because of how easily it could climb a tree on its web. Lee suddenly aimed, her finger on the trigger. No, Elsa quickly, but calmly, placed her hand on her shoulder. Don't shoot. It's huge. It saw us. Lee panicked. I don't like spiders, especially ones that big. I know. But as long as it's not moving, just keep your aim, don't provoke it. The web above them swayed. From the depths of the forest came an almost imperceptible crackle, as if someone had moved a giant body between the branches. And who's that? Lee asked, barely holding back. I don't know, Elsa replied tensely. But if it helps us, that would be great. Lee smirked at the thought of help. More likely, it's surrounding us and ready to pounce with this terrifying spider. The rustling sound repeated, a little closer. The spider shifted 2 of its eyes to the side, while the other 4 continued to watch the Toa. In a moment, the dense underbrush exploded with a loud roar. Elsa and Lee barely had time to drop to the ground and saw a massive open maw filled with sharp teeth. The spider had only managed to throw a web onto the tree to climb quickly, but hadn't moved yet. The giant maw grabbed the black body and dragged it back into the thick foliage. The moment seemed like an eternity. It disappeared. Elsa exhaled, carefully getting up. Lee nodded, her voice dull. Someone dragged it away. It was huge. I saw it. Elsa sat down, carefully brushing the dirt off her shoulder. Who do you think it was? Lee froze, staring into the dark. Yellow eyes, sharp ears, huge fangs. We didn't see its body, only its head suddenly appeared from the leaves. Elsa frowned. Muaka. She can throw her head forward over long distances. They exchanged glances. For a while, both were silent, listening to the night, as if hoping to hear the creature again, but the forest remained quiet. Could it be that Muaka we helped? Elsa said quietly, with a hopeful tone. Maybe. Lee replied. Back then, she was weak, but now she's clearly not just survived, but also saved us. Or she was just hunting, Elsa said calmly. But if it's her and she didn't attack us, then maybe she recognized us. They fell silent, staring into the thick darkness between the trees, where the creepy spider had just vanished. What now? Lee asked. Elsa got to her feet and looked around. Ahead, where the grass ended, the swamp darkened, sticky, murky, and dangerous. Let's move away from the swamp, find taller trees, and wait for dawn. I don't want to search in the dark when you can't see a thing. Agreed. We can't miss a single animal, especially if it's a predator. They walked silently away from the swamp, stepping around large roots and pushing through the foliage. Above them, the branches moved, and the damp air felt heavy with fog. Elsa was scanning for tall trees with thick branches, ones that could hold the weight of 2 until morning. Because the night in these jungles had only just begun, Elsa stopped at the base of a giant tree. Its trunk vanished into the darkness, the crown lost in the fog, and its roots were as thick as the torso of a Toa. Here it is, our chance to survive the night, Elsa said, touching the rough bark. Strong as the armor of an ash bear. Lee looked up. It's too high. That's a good thing. Spiders don't mind it, but definitely not the big ones like that one. Well, unless it has wings. Elsa smirked and immediately started climbing. Lee frowned, slinging her rifle across her back and grabbing onto the bark. Her first moves were clumsy, her boots slipping, her hands unable to find anything to grab. From above, Elsa's voice came. Are you sure you want to rest in a tree, not among wild animals? I'm starting to doubt it. Maybe because I'm not wasting time jumping from branch to branch, Lee muttered, trying to grab onto another branch. Remember my rifle. It's not for climbing, and it's heavy. Oh, right, how could I forget? The great Toa of Plasma is too serious and afraid of nothing except spiders and heights. Elsa chuckled, hanging upside down with her knees bent, holding onto a branch. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. You'll fall if you keep laughing like the Matoran by the campfire, Lee grumbled, making a quick move up and almost losing her balance. That's better. Almost there, just a bit more, and down below, a little black fluffy spider's waiting for you. Elsa easily moved to a thick branch and sat with her legs hanging down. Come on, just a little more. I'll find you a cozy spot, maybe with a view, from where you can easily aim at anyone you don't like. That spot is next to you, Elsa, said the Toa of Plasma with a smile. When Lee, breathing heavily, reached Elsa's level, the Toa of Jungle patted the branch beside her. Welcome to the Forest Princess's Inn. Just don't spin around in your sleep, we don't have any rails. I'll give your inn a low rating, Lee grumbled. Just a dream, sleeping on a branch over a swamp where poisonous spiders live and ghostly muako roam, and who knows what else. Lee tiredly leaned against the wide trunk of the tree, holding onto the leaves. Elsa rested her head on the wide, green branch, her voice quieter. For now, let's just survive till morning and catch some sleep. Yeah, sleep, and what if there are other dangerous Rakshi here? Lee countered. Who? The most dangerous animals live on the ground, well, near the ground, and we're high up on it. No one's getting up here. Something shifted behind Elsa. Lee screamed in horror. Behind us, she shouted, drawing her rifle in one smooth motion. Elsa turned sharply and saw a huge snake. A tree snake, about 3 meters long, with a flexible body covered in green armor resembling twisted leaves. Its wide triangular head had 2 menacingly curved horns. Its eyes glowed red, and 2 long sharp fangs protruded from its mouth, while its forked tongue flicked as if licking its prey. Lee tried to aim, but it was nearly impossible. The slippery branch, thick leaves, and great height were all frustrating and getting in the way. She couldn't shoot. Quiet. Elsa's voice was calm, and she smiled at Lee. Don't shoot. Are you sure? Lee asked anxiously, still keeping her weapon ready. Elsa turned and looked her friend in the eyes. It's Soraki. She's not a predator. We are just in her territory. Lee looked at the snake again. The creature wasn't attacking. It had frozen next to Elsa, moving its neck and slowly sniffing the air. Its eyes, large, red, with pupils like cracks in stone, looked at the Toa without aggression, more with curiosity. Elsa spoke softly, almost whispering. This is her home, and we are just guests. Lee reluctantly lowered her rifle, still tense. I was hoping for a one-person room in your hotel. Elsa laughed. Imagine it's a pet. The snake hissed quietly. Sorry, buddy, Elsa said, turning to Soraki. I know you love freedom. Sorry for intruding into your home, but I've got a treat for you. Elsa plucked a bright fruit the size of her palm from a nearby branch and held it out to the snake. Soraki sniffed the fruit with interest, her forked tongue flicking in and out of her mouth, and her red, attentive eye seemed to scan the treat Elsa offered. Then, very carefully, she opened her mouth, filled with teeth, and, tilting her head to the side, grabbed the fruit with her 2 long, sharp fangs, turned, and silently slithered upward. And you were scared. Elsa, still with the same calm expression, leaned back on the branch again. You are definitely born to be in trees. It's amazing. And you're made of molten metal. Elsa laughed. And that's why we're a great team. You focus on the aim, I focus on the knowledge of nature. And once again, silence hung over the jungle. But now, it was a little less frightening. Accepted by darkness, the small Matoran walked through the dark cave. The stone under his feet was cold and damp, like death itself, and each step echoed faintly. The glowing stone in his trembling hand barely illuminated the path, dim, pale, as if it feared the darkness that surrounded them. I shouldn't have, he whispered to himself, but he was afraid to speak aloud. In this place, words didn't help. Here they were heard. He had betrayed his own, not because he wanted to, but because otherwise, they would have betrayed him. He saw it in their eyes, in the whispers behind his back. He was unnecessary, he was weak, he was a shadow, and now he was alone. I've always been alone. They wouldn't have forgiven me anyway, he convinced himself. And here they are waiting for me. He called me, I could feel it. The cave was live. It called him by name, not loudly, but deeply, in his heart. He was scared, he trembled, but he kept walking. They don't care, he whispered again. They would have left me if they could. But the darkness, it accepts everyone. And he walked, because now there was nowhere else to go, because the darkness was the only one who spoke to him honestly, because the voice from deep within called him. It promised power, it promised glory. The shadows along the wall seemed live. Sometimes he flinched from the rustling sound, from a drop of water, from the creaking of stone. The cave was ancient, it smelled of dampness, rot, and something else, something unknown. It stretched deeper and deeper, as if pulling him into a black abyss from which there was no escape. But he is the only one left, the Matoran whispered. Only Makuta. The shadow suddenly flared along the walls, like smoke from a fire. He stopped abruptly, his knees betraying him, and somewhere ahead, in the absolute darkness, he felt someone was watching, it was waiting, and despite the horror, despite the shame and despair, he took a step forward. Not because he wanted to, but because he knew there was no way back. After a while, he entered a hall. The small Matoran, with trembling steps, moved forward and found himself in a huge, dark hall. The ceiling was not visible, only a dull, viscous darkness, as if the darkness itself hovered above him, watching. The only light came from a lake in the center, round, smooth, like glass. The protodermis inside slowly shimmered with cold silver light. Tall stone columns rose upwards, covered with winding vines. Some of them moved, though there was not a breath of wind in the hall. Somewhere above, from the impenetrable darkness, came the dripping of water. Every sound echoed in the Matoran's ears like a thunderclap, and every step resounded in his chest. He felt the walls pressing on him, as if the hall was live, and he, a foreign, unnecessary guest. The darkness was almost viscous. It clung to his body, crawled into the cracks of his mask, clogged his lungs. His heart was beating too fast from fear of the darkness. He clenched his fists. There was no turning back. In the distant corner, between the columns, two red eyes lit up, and the voice shattered the hall. The villagers have gone beyond my control. The voice was indescribably terrifying, as if death itself were speaking in the language of the Matoran. It was both dull and ringing, with a strong bass and a dead, ghostly intonation. It sounded from all directions, echoing off the walls, but the most frightening thing was that it was directed at the Matoran. It's time to act differently. You deserve a reward. Matoran Akmu, you deserve glory. A dark, massive figure with the grinding of gears and the sound of hydraulics raised its hand into the air. At that moment, a black Kanoi mask appeared near Akmu. He had never seen such a form and didn't know what it did. The mask slowly moved toward the sand-colored Matoran, and Akmu's hand seemed to reach out on their own to take it. Fear overwhelmed his soul. The dark, massive figure smiled and noticed, and its blood-red eyes narrowed in the dark. Take this mask, little Matoran. The mask of Weha will awaken the true power within you, the power of the darkness that lives in every being. You will become invincible. Matoran, Duraga, and Toa, they will worship you. They will respect you, obey your commands, they will fear you. Akmu held the black mask, resembling a helmet, in his hands, from which dark threads of energy flowed. There were several cracks for eyes on the face of the mask, and its mouth was completely covered by a powerful plate. I feel your fear, the loud voice said. Your fear is as strong as your desire for power. I give you this power. The shadows will always be with you. They will follow every step. They will be your strength. Akmu tried to calm his trembling knees and slowly began to bring the mask to his face. At that moment, he ceased to understand the situation. It was as if he was looking at himself from the outside, but could do nothing. His left hand confidently removed the old Ra mask, while his right hand firmly placed the new, heavy mask of Weha. Akmu didn't even have time to take a breath. Something tore inside, and the world collapsed. He couldn't feel his legs, his arms cramped, his fingers twisted, curled in spasms, and then something started that he couldn't describe with words. As soon as the new mask touched his face, a heat came, not warmth, but a dazzling, burning fire, as if all the energy of the universe rushed inside his body at once. Akmu staggered, but his legs stood firmly on the cold floor of the gloomy cave. Darkness flooded his lungs, like black smoke. He began to suffocate, fell to his knees, but the ground beneath him trembled, as if pulsing in sync with his pain. His body stretched, his arms and legs broke apart, lengthened, becoming foreign. His armor began to crack, and spikes began to protrude from beneath it, tearing through skin, ripping metal. He felt his spine bending, his back arching as if the world was breaking him in two, enormous claws becoming part of his palms. Enough. He wanted to scream, but from his mouth came not a voice, but a dull, ragged scream. The mask of darkness pulsed, as if it were a living heart. He grabbed his head, but couldn't stop the process. The shadow entered his lungs with every breath, flowed through his veins, reached his heart and squeezed it. It pierced him from the inside, made him its own. He screamed, but he couldn't hear his own scream. Instead, in his ears echoed laughter, dull and ringing at the same time. His eyes flared crimson, thick, viscous blood flowed from his eye sockets. It dripped down his face, the drops fell onto his armor, as lonely as Akmu. But he no longer felt pain, only emptiness. He was no longer a Matoran, he wasn't even someone who could dream of salvation, he was the shadow that had long ago accepted him. Now you are not alone. The shadow is your weapon, you must use it. With these words, his body jerked for the last time, and freezing, he stood up. He became taller, heavier. The mask seemed to become part of his face, and in that moment, Akmu understood there was no way back. Now you belong to me entirely. Your new mission. Lead the Toa astray, bring them to me, and after that kill all the Turaga and Matoran. I obey, my lord, said Akmu in a voice that wasn't his own, realizing that the Matoran was dead, and in his place, only he remained, the Toa of shadows. Sly plan with the first rays of sunlight, the jungles of Lawahi woke up. Light penetrated even the darkest corners between the lush canopies of majestic trees. The warmth spread across the leaves, and the dewdrops sparkled like thousands of little glowing Kanoe masks. Golden beams pierced through the thick foliage, casting patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Rahi birds chirped, their clear voices echoing with the guttural growls of unseen beasts somewhere far below. On the old tree where Elsa and Lee sat, the branch creaked. Perhaps a Sauraki lazuli stretched after its night hunt for fruit, curled up in the leafy underbrush. The humid air was filled with life. The scents of blooming plants, sweet fruits, and salty air from the nearby sea. Vines hung down from the trees like long snakes, gently swaying in the light morning breeze. Somewhere in the distance, an usul, a forest crab, clicked its claws as it climbed onto a sun-warmed rock to bask in the heat after the cool night. Elsa stretched. New day, new victories, she asked with a smile. I'm almost afraid to think about how to get down from here. Don't forget, I'm afraid of heights, Lee replied. Elsa grinned slyly. I have a plan. At that moment, two thick vines emerged from the branches and began to approach Lee. What are you up to? Don't worry, Elsa answered kindly. Just don't fidget, relax and enjoy. Lee tensed up but didn't say anything. The vines wrapped around her waist, coiled around her arm, and lifted her into the air. For a moment, panic flashed in Lee's eyes. I'm telling you, don't worry, I've got everything under control. The vines will gently lower you to the ground. Lee tried to relax, though it was hard, but the vines held her securely, which calmed her a little. When Lee felt her feet touch the ground, the thick vines carefully entangled her and shot back up. Elsa sat under the tree, smiling as she watched. Couldn't you have lifted us like this last night? Lee asked mockingly. I could have, Elsa answered confidently, but admit it, this is way more interesting than climbing on your own. Lee exhaled, and there was no anger in her gaze, but she had been quite scared earlier. All right, let's go, Lee said confidently, smiling. We need to find out what happened to the Rahi before it gets dark again. She took her rifle off her shoulder and confidently readied it in her hands. Elsa hopped up, then quickly approached the plasma Toa. Let's go, my friend, but one request. What is it? Lee didn't understand. Don't take off that little flower. What flower? At that moment, a branch lowered above Lee's head, and a blue flower descended from it, confidently attaching itself to her mask. Lee looked at Elsa with some doubt. "We're not at Artaka's meeting. You can be not just serious but also incredibly beautiful." Elsa laughed, and Lee nodded with a smile. The two Toa set off into the dense jungle, accompanied by the song of birds. The jungle grew denser. Through the thick canopy, only a few rays of light pierced through, illuminating the swirling mist that spread between the roots. Elsa walked ahead, scanning each bush, needing to find infected animals. Lee kept her rifle ready, following close behind her, frequently looking over her shoulder. Elsa stopped. "Something's not right," the jungle Toa whispered, placing her palm on the tree trunk. "The leaves are trembling." At that moment, a massive creature burst out from the underbrush, snapping branches with a loud crack. Its armor was bright green, and it had a long, black, powerful tail with a stinger at the end. Huge pincer slashed through the air, opening and closing with tremendous force, and it was supported by 6 large, black legs that moved it back and forth. "What is that?" Lee shouted, rolling to the side. The creature's tail slammed into the ground with such force that it tore up the earth and sent clumps of dirt and roots flying. "Nuajaga," Elsa called, crouching under the swish of one of the pincers. "You didn't know. I've read about them, but I've never seen one in person." Lee leapt back, and her rifle was already charging. "Well, now you've met one," Elsa said, and darted to the side, avoiding a second pincer strike that cracked the tree trunk. The Nuajaga spun furiously, snapping its pincer so fast that the air whistled. It repeatedly lunged at them, stirring up a cloud of leaves and knocking down branches. With a roar, it thrust its tail forward. Elsa barely managed to flip over as the tail passed just inches from where she had been standing, slashing the ground like a blade. "Is it infected?" Lee shouted. "Where are the unnecessary parts?" Elsa didn't answer. She darted forward, and a vine slammed into the creature's face. The Nuajaga snarled, recoiled, then lunged forward in a fit of rage. Lee fired a weak shot, and plasma flared. A blinding arc struck the beast's side. It roared from the damaged armor but didn't stop. Its claws slammed into the ground just inches from Elsa, sending her flying into the air. She flipped midair, grabbing onto a branch with her whip, and landed back on her feet. "Pincers!" Elsa shouted, ducking from a tail strike. "There's something off, look." "Yeah, I see. But try hitting them." Elsa hurled her vine, trying to pin one of the pincers, but the Nuajaga jerked sharply, snapping the vine with a loud crack. Lee fired again, a flash, but the shot only tore through the scorpion's shield. The creature charged at the plasma Toa, and its tail whipped up, strike coming down. Lee rolled to the side, and the ground exploded from the impact. "It's too fast," she cried. "Don't think, just feel," Elsa shouted, jumping up and twisting the vine around the pincer with all her strength. It opened slightly, and for a brief moment, a detail was visible. Lee aimed her rifle, holding her breath. Shot. A crack, a flash, and one of the controlling elements exploded. The Nuajaga roared, spinning its body around. The tail swung in a circular strike, knocking away leaves and branches. One left. Elsa wrapped her vine around the remaining pincer, holding it for a moment, but it snapped shut with such force that it tore through the vine. Elsa fell from the sudden loss of tension but quickly rolled to the side and sent another vine forward. It charged again, its massive body crushing the bushes. Its second pincer swung toward Lee. She dodged, raised her rifle, and sent a plasma burst into the pincer, doing no harm. Lee exhaled. "All right, we need to hit it again between the two parts of the pincer." Hundreds of vines around them shuddered as if responding to her words. They shot out from the trees, coiling around the creature's legs and tail. The Nuajaga thrashed, hissing, swinging its tail, trying to break free, but Elsa held firm. "Try now," Elsa shouted to her friend, and the vines held the open pincer, struggling to keep it in place. Lee aimed quickly and shot precisely, hitting the multicolored detail between the massive scorpion's pincer. The Nuajaga's bright green eyes flickered. It breathed heavily, then everything fell silent. The scorpion stopped struggling, its pincers dropped, and its tail froze. "See." It realized its mistake. Elsa exhaled, slowly releasing the vines. The Nuajaga stood still for a moment, then slowly, almost with dignity, turned around and lumbered off through the trees. Lee picked up the fragments of the multicolored detail from the ground and inspected them carefully. "Just be careful with it," Elsa said worriedly. "We don't know how it attaches to the body and turns you into a madman. The piece is covered in some kind of liquid. We should show it to SB Ritus and Crawh. Maybe they know what this substance is. Then, we'll give it to Artaka for a thorough analysis. Someone really wants to infect the forest. I won't let that happen, Elsa said confidently. You're right, Toa. From the foliage, a Turaga with a green mask and a saw quietly emerged. Someone wants to unleash Rahi on us, make the Matoran afraid to leave their homes. I don't know you, Turaga, Lee said, surprised. What's your name? Matao. Didn't expect to see you here, especially the second Toa there, he said, glancing at the green Toa. Elsa stepped closer and smiled. I'm not the Toa there, Turaga Matao, you're mistaken. I'm the Toa of plants, Elsa, and the girl in orange armor is Lee, the Toa of plasma. Elsa extended her hand to Matao, and in an instant, a pink flower bloomed in her palm, exactly the same as the one on her mask. She handed it to Turaga Matao. Amazing ability. Matao marveled. I've never seen anything like it. Many years ago, when I was a Matoran, I encountered many different elements with Toa heroes, but this is the first time I've seen something like it. Elsa blushed. Not at all. Now, there are many. He is his student, Elsa said passionately. His name is Crawh. A student. The green Turaga asked, surprised. I have heard legends about Artaka, but I've never seen him in person. Have you lived your whole life on this island? Lee asked. Matao laughed. No, brave Toa, we used to live on the island of legends. Mata Nui? Lee asked in surprise. Yes, it was called Mata Nui. We were told that the island was destroyed, that all the Matoran perished at the hands of Makuta, Elsa said quickly, overwhelmed with emotion. We were told about the horrible plant that destroyed the city, about the betrayal of the local Turaga, about the evil robots that kept the Matoran in fear. Vaki were never our friends, that's true, Matao laughed. The Morbuzak, a giant plant, was destroyed with the help of the great Disk Kanoka when the Toa of Metru united their powers. As for Turaga Doom, Matao paused, leaning more heavily on his staff, the top of which was a round saw. The fate of Doom was terrible. Makuta took control of him, stole his body, and trapped his soul in a capsule forever. We don't know if the Turaga has awaken or if he continues to sleep an eternal sleep, but Makuta was badly hurt. It's a long story, Toa heroes, and I'm no master at telling it. You'd better ask Turaga Vakama about it, the Fire Blaster, Matao said with a smirk. He loves to tell old legends, but the truth is, not all of them are accurate. Very interesting story, Turaga Matao, Elsa said. We thank you for this information. But we won't be able to visit Turaga Vakama, we are on a secret mission. I know, Matao said with a smile. Don't worry, your secret won't be revealed just like mine. I assure you, as a Toa Air, the hero of Mata Nui. Those were good days, but it would have been better if they were as calm as the life of Matoran now. Elsa and Lee stood, not knowing what to say. I understand your surprise, Matao said. A small, unremarkable Turaga, and then boom, a Toa hero. Elsa was the first to recover. We believe you, Turaga Matao. We just didn't think we'd get to meet and talk so easily with a real legend. There are so many stories about you. They are told to new Toa and Matoran who have just been gathered. They are taught in schools using their examples. Matao smiled. I'm pleased to hear that, and it's a shame I can't tell all this to my brothers who fought with me in those battles. I'm sure they would have been happy. But that's not what we are talking about right now. I understand you want to heal the Rakshi. Yes, Lee replied. But first we need to figure out how to do it. It's hard to find someone in the jungle if they don't want to be found. Or you need to be a Matoran, Matao laughed. Come on, I'll show you something. The humid air of the jungle enveloped their skin like a soft blanket of morning fog. Every movement shook drops off the leaves. The path was narrow, overgrown, almost invisible. But Turaga Matao walked forward confidently, with unexpected ease, his staff barely touching the ground. Lee and Elsa followed him, pushing through the damp vines, inhaling the spicy scent of blooming vines and rotting tree trunks. Somewhere above, a gecko bird flapped its wings, and from the depths of the thicket came a pulsating chirping. You walk faster than I thought, Elsa exhaled with a smile. It's a habit, Matao replied easily, without looking back. The jungle loves the fast. The slow don't survive here, that's why few come to visit us. So how do the Matoran move? Lee asked in surprise. Through the trees, Matao replied, leaping over a branch. They told me about you. They noticed us. Lee perked up. But how? We've been moving quietly and unnoticed. Matao stopped and smiled at the girls. Quietly and unnoticed, predators move through the jungle. But you are not them. You were noticed this morning on the tree, and then someone followed you to see where you were going. That's how I found you. Elsa didn't know what to say. It was so unusual and amazing that she was overwhelmed with excitement. Don't worry, Toa, the Matoran who saw you won't tell anyone. I warned them immediately. Your mission is important for the whole island, that's why I brought you here. Madhow pushed aside a large leaf with a mosaic of veins, and ahead appeared a clearing completely covered by the canopy of trees. The Toa stopped. Faint beams of light broke through the leaves. Along a dense wall of trees was a pen, surrounded by iron rods. Inside, in separate sections, sat various Rakshi, murky eyes, a hazy gaze, the shimmering of infected parts on their necks and legs. This, Elsa couldn't finish. Those we managed to catch, Madhow said calmly. At first we made cages out of bamboo, but then we realized that Kainara or Nuajaga wouldn't be stopped by that, so we ordered these iron, hardened rods from the Tomatoran. Each Rakshi has unusual parts on their bodies. As we understand, they are the ones that make the creatures behave aggressively. We tried to remove them, but understand, when you're facing a huge ashore and you're just a Matoran, it's scary to approach it. But something needs to be done, and that's why your help is so important to us. We noticed the parts are coated with some kind of liquid, Lee said. Maybe that's what affects them. Madhow thought for a moment. You know, girls, recently an epidemic started in Pokoro. The Matoran feel strong weakness and a sense of will suppression. The infected don't want to do anything, they're in pain, but they just lie at home, refusing any attempts at treatment. The disease first appeared among those who played Koli, the sport. Turaga Onua suggested that someone might be infecting the Koli balls, but since the balls are made of stone and there's nothing left after a game, it's very difficult to determine. Interesting, Lee said quietly. We need to examine the animals and try different methods. Lee knocked off the plates with plasma shots, Elsa said eagerly. They definitely help. The Turaga frowned. Don't worry, Turaga, it's making the weakest pulse. The animals are not in danger. That's good, replied Madhow. Thank you, Lee, but I've been thinking about something else. What if the poison, let's call it that, is destroyed by plasma? There is no one on our island who can use this element. Tahu's fire doesn't reach that level. It would immediately burn through the Rakshi's armor and body, and the animals themselves are afraid of fire. I think I understand your point, Turaga, Elsa said thoughtfully. Lee, try not to shoot at them with plasma, but direct a stream of energy at a specific part. Maybe the poison will disappear, and then it will be easier to remove the parts from the animals. It won't be easy, Lee said worriedly. I usually use my energy through the rifle to avoid causing too much damage. She burned down the training center like that, Elsa nudged her, laughing. They still haven't cleaned the fire stains. Lee lowered her eyes and crouched down. Listen to me, Lee, Madhow said confidently. When I was a Toa, I did a lot of foolish things, but you learn from your mistakes. I thought that once I became a Toa, I had learned everything, but each time I realized how little I knew and how little I could do. Wisdom comes with experience. So, try again, don't rush, and don't worry. Madhow placed a hand on Lee's shoulder. I believe in you, he said firmly. Toa of Plasma slowly lifted her eyes and looked at the cages with imprisoned Rakshi. They were suffering, they needed help. Alright, but first we need to understand who's here. Where do we start? Turaga Madhow extended his hand toward the cages. Let's go, he said with a smile. The Toa slowly approached, inspecting the Rakshi. In the first, largest cage, lay a huge cane bull. Its threatening horns shimmered with red light, reflecting through the thick foliage of leaves, casting rare rays of light. In another cage, divided into many small sections, sat several Kitanu birds. In the far corner, coiled up, was a Sauraki snake, curled up among the branches intentionally left in its cage, its eyes full of fury. The Toa circled, seeing Muaka licking its injured paw, and a purple Nuajaga, along with its little scorpion siblings, and Kikanalo with Hapuak, and many others. Elsa stepped closer, placing her hand on the bars. Poor things, Elsa said, almost in tears. We'll manage, Lee said quietly. But we'll need your help too. We'll have to hold them just in case. Of course, Elsa slowly lowered her hand. I'm ready. Madhow nodded. Then let's begin. Madhow carefully slid the bolt aside, and the iron door made of many bars opened easily. The ceiling inside was low, and Lee stepped in first. Elsa, stepping softly on the damp ground, extended her hand, and a thin vine, obeying her will, slid off the wall and carefully wrapped around the snake-like Rakshi. The creature hissed, but the vines were soft and gentle, only holding it without causing pain. Lee approached slowly, silently, like a sunbeam through the leaves. Sauraki backed into the corner of the cage, writhing, its eyes shining with fear, its body tense. Lee crouched down, looking into its eyes, and smoothly extended her right hand. A dim white-orange light flickered in her palm. "It's all right," she whispered. A second of silence, and then the stream of plasma shot from her palm. It was dazzlingly bright, yet completely controlled, silent, hot as the sun, and as precise as a beam of light through a lens. It moved toward the Rakshi's head, to the spot where the infected part, coated with poison, had been installed. And just before it touched, within a fraction of a second, the stream suddenly stopped, hovering in the air, not touching the body. Steam rose, and the poisonous liquid hissed, instantly evaporating. Its brown streaks vanished, as if they had never existed. Under the plasma's influence, the chemical compounds that made up the poison began to break down, crumbling into molecules like an ancient object touched by time. In a moment, there was no trace of the poison left, only a clean, smooth part that could easily be removed. Elsa felt the snake relax in her vines, and she gently lowered it to the ground, like a child in a cradle. The Rakshi hissed briefly and softly, not in anger, almost as if to express gratitude, and coiled up in the mossy bedding of leaves and roots. Lee stood up, shook the heat of the invisible fire off her fingers, and, looking at Sauraki, smiled slightly. One saved. Dozens more ahead. Madhao was pleased with what he saw. They had found a way to save the Rakshi, which meant bringing life back to the island. Elsa and Lee exited the cage, and Madhao smoothly closed the door. "I'll keep them here a bit longer, just in case. They'll come to their senses and I'll send them back home." Madhao smiled. "You did great." Lee lifted her eyes to him. "Thank you, Duraga. It wasn't easy for me. I've only recently joined the team. I still don't know and can't do much, but I'm glad I'm helping those who need our help." Elsa nudged her friend with her hip. "Come on, Lee. We have a lot of interesting animals ahead, and yes, you did great." Elsa extended a clenched fist to Lee, a gesture of acknowledgement, respect, and simply greeting, and the toe of plasma slowly bumped it with hers. "Don't be down, we have tough work ahead, but we'll manage." The iron cage was huge. Kainra stood, breathing heavily, its chest heaving. Its enormous body, covered in thick, scarred armor, trembled from strain. The front legs, ending in massive hooves, scraped the floor, leaving dents in the metal. Instead of rear legs, it had a massive caterpillar-like body with large, mud-covered wheels that screeched with every movement. The creature turned its thick neck, as if made from living protodermis. It could spring forward at any moment, like a spring. On its head, two curved red horns, like crimson blades, stood out. The giant maw was dangerous in itself, even without many sharp teeth. It could tear a toe in half without even noticing. But now the beast was not enraged. It was in a heavy, clouded state. On Kainra's shoulders, on both sides, glowed twisted, multicolored parts covered in poison. The creature's eyes glowed red, its pupils trembling from pain, from not understanding what was happening to it. Elsa stood in front of the cage, extending her arms forward. The vines, twisting, slowly wrapped around the bull, around its neck, tightly encircling it to prevent it from lunging forward, then covering its chest, legs, and finally its snout, securely gripping its jaws. Kainra struggled, growled, and it was clear that each jerk caused the beast pain. Lee stood nearby, tense to the limit. She took one step, then another, moving right in front of the beast. It growled, and the whole floor vibrated with its fury, but the vines held firm. "Interesting," Lee murmured softly, not taking her eyes off the red eyes. "How did the Matoran manage to catch it?" As Lee moved closer, the beast tensed up. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you, I will help." The beast made a dull sound. It was exhausted, too tired to resist any longer. Its eyes were weary, filled with surrender to the fact that this small, brightly colored creature would soon defeat it. Lee raised her hand, and plasma softly glowed from her palm. A narrow beam, shining with gold and white light, shot forward, and in a fraction of a second, it reached the contaminated parts. The liquid evaporated, the poison scattered, and the chemical bonds broke one by one. The beast's shoulders trembled, its eyes became calmer, the pain fading. "Done," whispered Lee, lowering her hand. "Now, to the other side." The beast slowly turned its head to follow the girl, and Lee could feel its powerful breath coming from its nostrils. It was a majestic sight. Such a huge creature, thought Lee, its beauty and strength are awe-inspiring. Stretching her arm forward, the girl directed another stream of plasma at the second part, destroying the poison. The animal carefully lay down on the cage floor, its enormous body pressing down on the leaves and branches that the Matoran had brought, creating a forest-like imitation. Slowly stepping back, Lee made her way toward Elsa. When Matau closed the cage, Elsa loosened her grip, and the vines gently lowered Kainra's head to the ground. The massive beast growled, but now calmly. "Now, what's next?" Elsa giggled, though her voice revealed how much she had worried about Lee and how glad she was that it was over. "I'm ready," said the toe of plasma, and Matau opened the cage with the birds. When the sleepers awakened, the cave beneath Mount U was ancient and silent, like the mountain itself. The tunnel stretched in winding paths deep into the earth, moving farther from the light of day. There was no wind, no sound, only footsteps, muffled echoes against the rough walls, and the sharp drops of water falling from the ceiling onto the stone. This sound was like the breath of the cave itself, heavy, uneven, making the heart stop. The rocks on both sides narrowed, as if trying not to let them pass, but to hold them back. Sometimes the walls became damp and slippery, like the skin of an underground beast, and the ceiling dropped so low that they had to crouch, feeling the weight of the stone above their heads. The ground beneath their feet was dark and dry, but in places unexpectedly covered with a layer of stone dust or cracks that disappeared into the darkness. One misstep, and they could fall, vanish into the silence. The path seemed endless, and time lost its meaning. It was hard to believe that outside, somewhere, the sun was still shining and the trees of Lawahi were rustling. Rare glowing crystals barely pierced the darkness, casting ominous, uneven shadows, as though creatures were creeping along the walls. The blue light only made the darkness deeper, it didn't save. It accentuated how little of the world of the living remained here. This was a place where the earth kept its secrets. Silent, foreign, and ancient, and every step taken on it reminded them. Here, you are not the master, you are a guest. The cave narrowed and expanded, the stone vaults looming over Krah and Espiritus, as if they wanted to close in and leave the Toa forever in the dark. This was not fear, only silence and depth, pressing down on their shoulders, making them involuntarily listen to their own breathing. Espiritus walked ahead, holding in her palm a device made from protodermis. The petals of the panel opened like a flower, following the movements of the girl's fingers. Inside, above the device, a holographic projection of a map of the tunnels glowed, with lines updating as though pulsing, reacting to turns and changes in the terrain. The interactive image didn't just show the path, it felt it. The toe of atmosphere walked confidently, her gaze fixed on the screen, her fingers adjusting the vector, checking signals. She could hear Crouch stepping calmly behind her, staying a little to the side. His golden sword reflected the dim light of the crystals, leaving soft glimmers along the walls. The toe of metal didn't speak a word, each of his steps careful. He studied the patterns on the walls, cracks, and ancient carvings. Sometimes he turned, hearing the sound of falling stones behind him, the rumble of wind rushing through the winding, endless path. On the map before the girl, the goal gradually appeared, a huge point deep within, where, according to legend, the Bohrok and their queen slept. They emerged from the tunnel silently. The chamber they stepped into was colossal. The ceiling was lost in the darkness, and there were dark tunnels on both sides. Espiritus' voice came almost in a whisper, but in the silence of the chamber, it seemed like an echo. "This is just one, there are dozens like it." "Incredible," whispered Crouch. "Who built this?" "I don't know," replied Espiritus. "The Bohrok should clean everything on the surface, which means this hive is not older than the island." A dull, swampy green light reflected off the walls and floor in uneven patches. It came from glowing stones embedded in the walls, some glowing softly, almost gently, others flickering with coldness. The cave was not dead, it was filled with a sense of waiting. Oval openings were arranged along the walls, each the size of a toa. Each hive was covered by a strange, translucent green material, through which the outlines of something could barely be made out. Crouch stepped closer, and the air was tense. The light of the dim stones fell on his golden armor, reflecting in a thin beam that touched the surface of one of the hives, and then he saw it. For a split second, no longer than a heartbeat, something flickered inside the hive. A blue eye flashed in the darkness, cold, emotionless, yet instilling fear. To the left, the transparent shell was marked with a pattern resembling flames reaching upwards. He recoiled, his breath uneven. It was a moment, but it left a heavy, terrifying impression, like a bad dream. Craw H didn't ask any questions, he just silently watched the greenish film quiver from the slight wind that swirled through the cave. SB Rita slowly moved forward, her palm tightly gripping the device. The map glowed with a soft blue light, indicating the path to a nearby corridor. "Let's go," SB Rita said softly. "The map says the mechanism is in that corridor." She raised her hand, pointing to the dark corridor in the wall of the hive. They stepped into a chamber no less vast than the Bohrok hive. The light from the rare blue stones faded into the thick darkness. The map in SB Rita's palm trembled, reacting to the approach of the target, the goal. The space in front of them stretched out in a wide circle, at the center of which stood a strange cube. 6 sides, 6 symbols engraved in metal. But it wasn't the cube that caught Craw H's attention, it was the 2 figures standing on either side. Tall, 3 times the height of any Toa, monolithic silhouettes in blue and red armor. Their bodies were made from the wreckage of ancient machines, twisted bundles of wires, heavy armor plates, 2 long tails that served as tubes, a massive neck compressed into the torso, and 2 dull eyes stared at the cube with a silent, dead gaze. Their mouths, lined with rows of sharp, white teeth and horns on their heads curving backward, completed the picture of a terrifying living machine. Craw H froze, glancing back at SB Ritus, but she was only looking at the cube, as if she knew the awakening of these creatures was tied to it. "Incredible," she said. "This cube holds enormous power. Does it control the Bohrok?" Craw H asked carefully, as if afraid to awaken the ancient machines. "Practically," SB Ritus replied. "It controls the life force of these 2 queens." She gestured to one of the creatures, "and they control all the Bohrok that exist." "Truly queens," Crouch said with admiration, marveling at their majestic appearance. "Agreed. I wouldn't want to meet them in battle. If they can control a swarm, who knows what other power they might have. But our goal is to make them activate, and for that we need to contact Artaka." SB Ritus pressed the device a few times, and it illuminated a flickering image. On the screen appeared a creature, whose presence, regardless of its silent appearance, was always felt as something powerful and immeasurably ancient. In its eyes, deep and bright, like glowing lights in the volcanic mines, there was not only unimaginable wisdom, but also the realization that it was the keeper of truths that even the most powerful Toa could only dream of. Its armor was a complex intertwining of ancient symbols and intricate constructions, crafted with such refined precision that it seemed almost live. It shimmered in every shade of metal, from silver to dark, almost black, like its existence was deeply connected to the very essence of matter. This was not just armor, but a creation, every detail of which carried the power of both creation and destruction. "Have you arrived at the hive?" The voice of the weapons master, as always, sounded quiet but confident, as if his words were filled with ancient power. "Yes, we are here," replied SB Ritus, her voice showing a hint of anxiety. She was standing next to Craw H, but her gaze was focused on the device, which still emitted a faint glow, its holographic surface now completely filled with an image of Artaka. "Good," he said, and his image seemed to dim slightly, as if Artaka had paused for a moment. But his attention quickly returned to the task at hand. "You need to activate the cube. To do so, you must find its core and enter the correct code, a series of presses that will awaken the mechanism. It will activate over the course of a day, so you'll have enough time to inform the Matoran and the Toa Mata X to evacuate to Mata Nui." SB Ritus nodded, listening to his words, but her gaze was now focused on the large cube in front of her. It hung in the air, motionless, with a glowing white circle beneath it, emitting an upward stream of energy. Meanwhile, standing off to the side, Craw H eagerly watched the proceedings. His eyes never left the girl, and he felt a light stir in his chest, as if he had a sense that something important was about to happen. SB Ritus, holding her breath, approached the cube. She stretched out her hand and touched its surface. In response to her touch, the light in the room grew brighter, and the cube, as though live, reacted, small sparks running along its edges. She slowly ran her fingers along its surface, as if searching for hidden buttons. At that moment, Craw H could see her face change slightly, and although she tried not to show her anxiety, her movements became a bit more tense. Finally, she pressed one of the hidden elements of the cube, and it opened. 6 faces spread apart, and bright white light poured out from inside. A panel appeared before the toe of air, emerging from the center of the cube. SB Ritus quickly began entering the code of symbols Artaka had dictated to her. After a short while, the device in her hand dimmed, and the cube closed. At that moment, the air around them filled with a slight, almost imperceptible vibration, as though the energy trapped inside the cube was beginning to awaken. Crawh felt the excitement ripple through his body. The girl suddenly turned, the dull eyes of two giants flashed with deep green light, and a deep voice echoed throughout the cave. It is not time yet. All obstacles will be swept away. It is not time yet. Spiritus approached Crawh. We need to get back quickly to warn everyone. Understood. Crawh nodded. Then let's hurry. I'm getting chills from these queens. She nodded, and both Toa began running back into the cave they had come from. Spiritus and Crawh dashed through the dark corridors of the cave, as dark as the night itself, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness, breaking the ominous silence. Only the dim light from the glowing stones illuminated their path, leaving long, blurry shadows behind them, merging with the darkness. The Toa ran ahead, her movements swift and confident. Every step she took was perfectly measured. She felt every stone underfoot, every twist of the corridor. She didn't allow herself a single moment of hesitation, only a drive toward the goal. Crawh followed her, his footsteps a bit louder than hers. He kept his distance, watching her movements, ready to support her if necessary. The corridor suddenly turned right, then left, then right again. The stones on the walls, covered with glowing patterns, helped them navigate. Their light was ethereal, sometimes dim, and only thanks to this could they make out the direction. Spiritus suddenly stopped, and in the light of her blades, something foreign gleamed. What happened? Crawh asked in surprise. We are not alone, she whispered, but with certainty. Crawh tightened his grip on the hilt of his golden sword. Then there will be a fight. The darkness was not just an absence of light. It was a substance, creeping along the walls, enveloping the floor as if it were live. It was hard to breathe. The desire to hide in a corner, pretending not to be there so it wouldn't find you, was overwhelming. This is not just darkness, she whispered. Suddenly, she sensed a presence, and their gazes lifted. They saw two huge eyes, unreal, not glowing like the eyes of a Matoran or Toa. They burned from within, a deep crimson, dead light like molten stone under black water. The eyes looked directly into their souls, and then it spoke. The voice didn't sound. It pierced through. It was in their heads, in the floor, in the walls. It was a voice that shouldn't exist, and yet it was here. Toa, the voice was lifeless yet live. It wasn't shouting, it wasn't threatening, it knew it was right. Your efforts are dust on the mask, ash in the protodermis. You are weak, you will perish. Return home while you still can. The words sank into their minds. Even Crawh, always cold, tightened his grip on the sword handle so hard that the metal screeched. Suddenly, the darkness retreated, the eyes disappeared, and the air became lighter. The light slowly returned, and only the trace of cold still lingered in their armor. What was that? She whispered. Crawh didn't respond immediately. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed an unease he couldn't hide. It was Makuta. At that moment, from around the corner, the first one appeared without a sound. A blue body, green limbs, predatory red eyes. Rakshi, whispered Spiritus. And then the enemy disappeared. A moment later, his fist slammed into the side of the girl with such force that she flew sideways, crashing into the wall. Crawh swung, and the air before him vanished. The sword strike missed, and at that same moment, the Rakshi appeared behind him. Strike. The sound of armor cracking, claw slid across Crawh's back, leaving scratches. He growled and turned, putting all his strength into the blow. This time he hit, the blade flashed, and the teleporting Rakshi recoiled with a hiss, a crack spreading through its chest. Next strike is mine, shouted Spiritus, and at that moment, she froze. Another Rakshi emerged from the cave. Its body was beige, its limbs blue. It walked calmly. Behind it, silhouettes stretched like smoke. Ancient beasts, huge snakes, shadows with crimson eyes, they brought death, or so it seemed. I see them, she whispered. But what I see, I do not know. The teleporting Rakshi appeared again, behind Spiritus. But she had already turned and thrown a dagger. The blade pierced the shadow, but it was an illusion. The real Rakshi struck her from the side, sending her crashing into the wall. The sound of metal, her armor dented, and the girl screamed in pain. Hold on, Crawh shouted. He swung his sword, cutting through one of the figures. The illusion vanished, but instantly dozens more appeared. They whispered, stood still, staring into their souls. The illusion Rakshi raised its arms, and the illusions moved in sync. It didn't attack, it played with their minds, with their wills. Crawh ran to Spiritus to help her up. She was breathing heavily, shadows appeared around them. One of them was her old friend, a Toa who had died long ago in battle. His image, his voice. "You abandoned me," he said. Her eyes trembled, and she lowered the dagger. "No," Krah yelled, throwing his sword. It pierced the figure, and it vanished. "It's not him. It's a lie. Espiritus, pull yourself together." She raised her head. Her lips trembled, but fire flickered in her eyes once again. "I know." At that moment, the teleporting Rakshi attacked again, but this time, Krah was ready. He jumped forward, intercepted the movement, struck its chest. The Rakshi vanished and appeared behind him. Krah turned, met the blow with his shoulder, metal sparking, and the Rakshi disappeared into the darkness. The shadow with claws lunged at Espiritus. She struck with her dagger, the blade passed through emptiness. The illusion dispersed, but the next one was already close. Krah. The girl barely dodged the phantoms. "It's back. Break it." Krah closed his eyes. He didn't believe it, but he moved forward, through the crowd of shadows, ignoring their deceptive blows. He only felt the real steps, a foreign weight on the stone. And then, a flash. The sword struck the armored figure. The illusionist recoiled with a hiss, and Espiritus threw the blade of the storm at him, shattering his head into many small pieces. The illusions vanished. The massive body of the Rakshi fell to the ground with a heavy thud, but the silence did not last. In the depths of the cave, a rustle echoed, like the rustling of dead leaves, only thicker, denser, angrier. Krah raised his sword, and the toe of the atmosphere froze, listening. From the darkness, a third Rakshi emerged, orange in color. Fireflies, Krah said. Thousands of red insects, like molten protodermis, with wings and tiny jaws that they used to pierce the flesh and consume their victim while it was still live. "Air!" the Toa shouted, swinging her blades and calling a gust of wind, but it was too late. The swarm engulfed them like an avalanche. Krah shielded himself with his arm, the armor ringing from the bites but remaining intact. "They won't break through," he growled. "Go to the wall." But Espiritus didn't answer. She gritted her teeth, her body trembling. The fireflies were chewing through her armor. Small, but coordinated, they found weak spots, joints, thin areas. Arg! She dropped one of her blades and struck at the swarm with her other hand, but it was like swinging a shovel through flames. "They're everywhere." Then a flash, the Rakshi of teleportation attacked again. It appeared next to her, and its claw strike knocked the Toa to the ground, her blade flying away. She fell to her knees, and the fireflies descended upon her like a living torch. "Espiritus!" Krah shouted, stepping forward, but a teleporting Rakshi appeared before him. A side strike, predatory, calculated. His sword slid across the Rakshi's armor, but it vanished. "Enough," Krah whispered. He lowered his sword to the ground. The golden metal pulsed, and his entire armor ignited, like in a forge. He focused, changing the structure of his armor, making it as hot as flame. The fireflies could not lend, they burned up mid-flight. He stepped toward Espiritus. "Get up. I'll distract them." She struggled to rise, her breath ragged. "I have a gift for them." She raised her hand, and a whirlwind full of fury erupted from her palm. It sucked in part of the swarm and cast it away. The fireflies vanished in the vortex, but new ones kept arriving. The Rakshi controlled them like a conductor. Krah charged at him, his sword ablaze, and he saw it, something glowing in the Rakshi's chest, like a mini teleport that it used to summon creatures. "I'll shut your hive's mouth," he growled. A moment and a strike. The Rakshi tried to recoil but was too slow. The blade sliced through its chest. The swarm soared, losing control, the insects scrambling. But the teleporting Rakshi was already nearby, striking Krah in the shoulder, a second blow knocking him down. "Too many of you," Krah growled, lying down. "But I have armor." He slapped his hand on his chest, and it flared up, changing like molten metal. The Rakshi's blow, which seemed fatal, sank into the thickened armor and got stuck, like a trapped arrow. Krah struck the Rakshi's face with all his strength, and it vanished. Espiritus was already standing, her armor full of holes, her hands trembling. "Let's finish them off," she said with hatred. The insect Rakshi, holding onto its split chest, slowly moved forward, wires sticking out of its body, sparking and torn. In its hands, a staff appeared with two blades on the edges, and a teleporting Rakshi walked beside it. Its armor crumpled like clay under the foot of a Rakshi, but its walk betrayed no weakness. It was ready to die but would not retreat. "Step back," Espiritus said quietly, looking ahead. Her voice was like the whisper of a storm. Craw H froze for a second, then stepped back, knowing this was not just a battle. This was the assault of the elements. The toe of weather spread her arms. In each palm was a dagger, sharpened like the wind between the rocks, and she raised her head. At that moment, a cold wind shook the cave, and the Rakshi froze. Something in their minds told them. Something had begun that could not be stopped. Espiritus lowered her head, and her eyes burned with white light, from which lightning crackled. The wind intensified, and the cave's ceiling lit up as lightning struck the ground, one after another. The girl began to slowly rise into the air. Stones were torn from their places, as if obeying their new mistress. The teleporting Rakshi flashed, appearing beneath her to strike from below, but it didn't make it in time. The thunder and the strongest strike pierced its body, scorching the metal beyond recognition. A shockwave swept through the cave, collapsing stones and crystals, and then the charred remains of the monster's armor fell to the ground. The insect Rakshi retreated for the first time, backward, hissing, for the first time feeling what its victims had felt, the fear of death. And suddenly, its body began to rise, the air beneath it thickened, the pressure changed, and now it hung, helpless, like a fly caught in a web. Now, whispered Craw H. Pieces of iron tore from the walls, coiling like snakes, wrapping around the Rakshi's limbs, twisting it, crucifying it. It jerked, hissed, but could no longer break free. The girl smiled. It was a smile of strength, not malice. The last lightning strike tore through the darkness, its power beyond human. It passed through the Rakshi's body, and the armor exploded, shattering into pieces. Then the wind died down. Espiritus slowly descended to the ground. The lightning in her eyes faded, returning to their blue light. The girl staggered, her steps unsteady. The fireflies had left their mark. Her armor was covered in cracks, and her face under the mask was pale. She whispered, and staggered. But Craw H was nearby. He caught her, preventing her from falling. I've got you, he said. We need to return and meet with the others, Espiritus said with difficulty. The Rakshi broke my transmitter. Let them know the meeting place. All right, but first I'll heal you, Craw H replied firmly. And the Toa slowly made their way up the cave. Dark Toa the warm, bright sun pours its soft golden light over the coast. The bright yellow sand, with scattered specks of shining protodermis, heats up under the sunlight, but a cool breeze from the ocean softens the heat. The waves lazily roll onto the shore, rustling the pebbles and discarded seashells. Their sound blends with the deep hum of the distant surf, turning the air into a continuous, living symphony of water and wind. On the other side of the beach, from the walls of the great forest of Lawahi, stretches a dense stream of damp, fragrant wind. It carries the scents of moss, tree resin, and blooming vines, interwoven with the chattering and cries of invisible Rakshi hiding in the greenery. The jungle lives its own life. Somewhere, a dry branch snaps. Somewhere, unseen creatures are calling to each other. And somewhere, a dull thud echoes as something heavy strikes a tree. High above the shore, soaring above the foam and the beach, Kaiaveris fly. Their wings gleam in the sunlight. Turquoise and silver feathers reflect the light like shards of a mirror. The birds fly in flocks, sharply diving toward the water, emitting loud, piercing cries that echo in the coastal cliffs. Occasionally, one hovers in the air, scanning the surf for prey, then dives down and disappears into the spray. Some Kaiaveris perch on smooth boulders jutting out of the sand, shaking the moisture from their wings and starting to groom their feathers. You can't imagine how amazing Lee was at healing the animals. Elsa couldn't sit still. She was spinning, dancing, and bragging about how great their time in the jungle had been. First, we were attacked by Nuajaga, Elsa said excitedly. I held it off, and Lee just went bam. And the infected part of the animal flew apart. And did I mention we found the poison? And then Lee was able to destroy it with plasma. Lee, tell them. 6 Toa sat on the sand by the sea, wounded, tired, but happy to be together again. So, I take it we all did what we planned. As Ladu spoke up. Vildar and I really trashed the Nuirama's lair, a few scratches, but we're alive, and most importantly, Onua found Lua, and they flew off with the villagers to the village. Lua, is she alright? Elsa continued to chatter restlessly. We met with Duraga Matau. You met? Espiritus asked, surprised. Yes. He found us and promised not to tell anyone. He showed us where they had corralled the Rakshi and taught Lee how to control her power. The Toa of Plasma smiled. Yeah, it wasn't easy, but we managed together. Elsa held them off with her vines. They were huge. If I hadn't held them, they would be eaten. Lee. Vildar laughed. Girls, you're always up to your tricks. Spiritus and Kra performed the most important task of all of us. Vildar pointed at the silently sitting Kra and the injured Spiritus. We all completed important tasks, Spiritus replied. We were unlucky enough to run into Rakshi. Rakshi, Elsa exploded. Elsa, quiet, they're here, it's fine. Ezldu laughed and stopped her. Elsa sat down on the warm sand, but it was clear that emotions were overwhelming her. We dealt with the Rakshi, Kra said. It was tough, but we managed. Now, the most important thing is to warn all the Toa Mata X that the Bohrok will wake up soon. But we don't know where they are. I know. The voice came from the direction of the jungle. A figure resembling a Toa emerged from the shadow, his armor black as coal, with arms and legs the color of sand. But the most frightening thing was that large spikes were growing out of them. His mask resembled an ancient helmet shown to Matoran in school textbooks, and from under it red-blooded eyes were visible. I know where to find them, the voice continued in a friendly tone. Come, let me show you. We don't know you, Kra replied. Apologies, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Akmu, I am a Toa, of shadows. The whole team tensed up. No. Akmu laughed, not in that way. I study the dungeons on different islands. I was sent to you by Artaka. He told me to help you and the Toa Mata meet with Makuta. I'll guide you all together so no one gets lost in the dark caves. If I contact Artaka and ask if this is true, Spiritus asked sternly, isn't your device broken? Akmu asked mockingly, how do you know that? I saw where you fought. I don't know who you met, but the EU mountain was shaking from the impacts. I was nearby. And when I came to help, no one was left, and among the wreckage of strange parts, I found your device broken into pieces. Spiritus pondered. You're right, my communication device was destroyed, but why should we trust you? Lee stepped forward, not taking her eyes off the stranger. You said you know all the tunnels, and that you're a Toa, but we've never heard a word about you from anyone. Why should we trust you? The Toa just sighed and placed his hand on his chest, as if offended. Because if I were your enemy, wouldn't we be fighting right now? No, you'd already be battling 6 of my clones, or tied up in the bushes while I whisper to Makuta where you are. But instead, here I am, under this lovely sun, with you, all alone. Doesn't that say something? Enemy logic, but not proof. Kra narrowed his eyes, studying him. He just laughed. Logic is my weapon, just like the path in the dark. I was made for caves, my friends. While other Toa breathed fresh air, I studied mines, carved paths into the depths of caves on different islands. I know where the walls breathe, where the earth is deceiving, and where you can slip through unnoticed. Without me, you'll be wandering blindly, and as I see, your plans are grand, to meet with the Toa Mata and crush Makuta himself, right? Elsa, looking him straight in the eye, said softly, if you're lying, you won't be able to hide. The jungle hears and remembers. Let them listen, the stranger replied cheerfully. All I want is to help. Makuta is stronger than you think. His shadow is deeper than mere darkness, and without a guide, you could enter where no one returns from. Vildar stepped forward grimly, his gaze hardening. But why do you want this? What do you want in return? The smile on the stranger's face faded for a moment. His voice grew serious. For Makuta to disappear forever, for Mata Nui to see the sun rise again, unclouded by shadow. For others to stop living in fear. They've lost too much, enough is enough. Ezldu silently watched him, then nodded briefly. Then prove it. Guide us, but one wrong step, and I swear, you'll feel what real sound is, not your chatter. Oh, sounds fair, the Dark Toa replied with his usual lightness, making a welcoming gesture with his hand. So, esteemed heroes, it's cooler underground, let's go save the world. And the other Toa? Lee asked. They'll be here soon, don't worry. I saw them plan to descend. I'll bring you together. They moved along the winding shore, where the warm sand gradually gave way to black boulders covered in green moss and salt stains. The jungle noise behind them grew quieter, swallowed by the rising roar of the surf. Ahead, among the sheer cliffs, the mouth of a cave loomed dark. It smelled of salt, dampness, and something ancient, like forgotten temples, where no Matoran's foot had stepped for hundreds of years. The Toa paused for a moment, just a breath, then stepped inside, one by one. The light stayed behind, the air grew cooler, and the sound of the surf dissolved into the muffled silence of the cave, broken only by drops dripping from the ceiling somewhere deep within. The darkness met them silently. The cave greeted them with a grim silence, disturbed only by the distant howl of wind, as if the earth itself sighed in forgotten depths. The walls were damp, streaked with moisture and moss, with faintly glowing stones scattered on the walls, casting a weak, dim blue light that illuminated the way. Above, tree roots were still visible, dark, intertwining in knots, pushing through the stone, sometimes dripping water that rang loudly in the silence. But with each step, the roots became fewer, and soon only the stone-vaulted darkness stretched above their heads. The path led downward, an uneven descent, sometimes scattered with small debris. Somewhere deeper, stones fell with dull thuds, echoing through empty galleries. The air grew colder. The sound of their own steps began to dull, as though absorbed by the cave itself. They moved further into the heart of the earth, where there was no place for the sun or time. And soon the darkness closed in completely, thick, live, breathing. Only the way forward remained, into silence and mystery. Akmu walked confidently, as if he knew every stone and every turn of this dark world. There was not a hint of caution in his step. He moved as if this were his own territory. Espiritus, keeping her eyes on him, walked ahead, her sharp senses detecting every rustle in the cave, every shift in the air. She still didn't trust him. "You speak as if everything is already decided," she remarked with caution. "Why should we trust you? Why are you so sure that the Toa Mata are waiting here? We could find them on the surface." Akmu slowed his pace slightly, but did not turn. His voice remained steady, without a trace of doubt. "On the surface, you wouldn't manage to find them all. The Toa Mata have already planned to descend here, into these caves. I'm just the guide who knows where to meet them. I'm not leading you into darkness, I'm leading you to the place where you'll meet them, and after, I'll guide you to the hall where Makuta is." Espiritus looked at his confident back, then exchanged glances with Lee and Vildar. In her heart, she still didn't fully trust this mysterious guide. "Are you assuring us that everything will be exactly as you say?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from betraying her doubt. Akmu did not answer immediately, only continued his path into the darkness. His words, echoing in the silence of the cave, reverberated in her mind. "I'm not saying it will be easy, but if you want to meet them, come with me." The darkness around them thickened, and Espiritus felt that with every step they were drawing closer to the unknown. Toa Mata moved in single file along a narrow tunnel, where small stones littered the ground and water dripped from above. Ahead was Akmu, as if he sensed every turn in advance. He did not slow his pace, nor speed up, he simply walked silently. The caves became increasingly more convoluted. Turns to the right, then to the left, sometimes they had to climb upward, then descend slippery steps carved into the stone. Crouch, bringing up the rear, glanced into the darkness behind them. No one, just the sound of dripping water and the dim light from the glowstones. "How much further?" Lee muttered, breathing heavily. "These turns never end." "Soon," came Akmu's reply. His voice echoed off the walls, as if repeated by hundreds of unseen creatures. Finally, the tunnel widened, revealing a familiar hall, a tall space with stone vaults and columns disappearing into the darkness. This was the same place where Toa Mata had found themselves at the beginning of their journey to this island. In the center stood the same iron pillar. "Stop, you turned the wrong way," Akmu said with a smile. And then, from the ceiling, with a low hum, 6 massive platforms began to descend. On them stood the silhouettes, 6 Toa Mata. Tahu, Kopaka, Gili, Lua, Onua, and Pahatu. They were descending, looking around. Espiritus took a step forward, but Akmu suddenly stopped. His hand blocked the way, preventing them from moving further. "No, wait," he said fearfully. Something's not right." And before anyone could ask a question, the passage was covered with black fog. It filled the corridor with a hum, cutting off the path forward. From the darkness, as if from the abyss, emerged red, burning eyes. They hung in the air, motionless and ancient, like the night itself. Then a voice echoed, a low, foreign voice that seemed to sound within their minds. "Your friends will die even without your help. I will take care of that." The Toa froze. Even the air seemed to stop, as the Toa of atmosphere stepped forward, gripping the hilts of her blades. "Makuta!" Laughter rang in their heads. Akmu stood, rooted to the spot. His friendliness had disappeared. For the first time, he looked lost. "I didn't expect this," he said, his voice quieter. "This wasn't part of the plan." Vildar clenched his fists, his armor crackling with energy from the tension. "So you are a traitor after all." Akmu slowly shook his head. "No, don't worry, I know another way." He turned and saw the intense gazes of the 6 Toa. "This hall leads to many caves. The main ones, the largest, go in different directions, but they will soon connect. The Toa Mata will likely go through them, so we will meet in the room where they converge. This is your last chance, Espiritus said firmly, drawing her two glowing red-hot blades. One more mistake and we will consider you an enemy. Akmu lowered his gaze to the blades. They burned with heat, small electrical sparks running across them from time to time. The air was filled with ozone. Don't worry, Toa, Akmu smirked. There will be no more mistakes. The dark Toa silently passed through the others, heading back, then turned into a side tunnel. The Toa Mata Y exchanged glances, all ready to attack. The darkness around the heroes thickened, like a dense fog filled with lurking threats. The glowing stones that had been flickering along the walls disappeared one by one. Now, only the dim glow of Lee's Kanoe mask and the flickering reflections from Espiritus's heated blades cut through the darkness, casting fleeting shadows on the uneven walls of the tunnel. The air grew heavier, filled with ancient dust and a musty smell, mixed with anxiety, as if fear itself controlled this place. After some time, the darkness parted slightly, and before them loomed giant semicircular doors, covered with centuries of dust. They seemed immobile, but in their silence there was a hidden mystery. The surface of the doors was etched with ancient drawings carved into the stone. In the light of Lee's mask and Espiritus's blades, the images became visible, one of which showed a creature standing over water, seemingly pulling another distorted body out of it. What is this? Elsa whispered, but the question hung in the air like centuries-old dust. Perhaps it was the true image of an ancient nightmare, carved by the hand of one who knew the truth, or perhaps fear itself had drawn this meaning in the minds of each Toa, for deep in their hearts, even the bravest of them felt. Inside, something was waiting for them. The Toa Mata Y walked silently, one after the other, carefully entering the giant hall hidden deep within the earth. The air here was thick, almost viscous. Tall columns disappeared into the darkness, extending into the bottomless shadow above their heads, some of them transparent and green. Dark vines stretched across the floor, entwining the structures. In the center of the hall stood a round pool filled with silvery protodermis, which appeared calm, without a ripple or gleam, only a flat mirror-like surface surrounded by smooth stone. Suddenly, the light from Lee's mask flickered out, as if something had passed by, fleeting and cold. Even Krah, usually reserved, abruptly stopped and looked into the darkness. And then they noticed it. In the far corner of the hall, between two columns, where even the pale glow of the light stones did not reach, two eyes appeared. Narrow, predatory, filled with lice. Espiritus froze. Krah raised his sword. The other Toa instinctively assumed combat stances, but no one moved first. From the shadows, a figure slowly emerged. It stood twice as tall as any Toa, and even in the half-light, it was clear this was no creature. This was a nightmare forged from fear. Its armor seemed like foreign body parts. The shoulders were made from the curved shells of Rakshi, the chest from the combined masks of Matoran. Four dark tentacles, like thick shadows, extended from its back and sides. Its legs were beastly, curved like a predator poised to pounce, stomping on the stone like thunder, leaving deep dents in the ground. On the monster's head was a mask of Kraken, the mask of darkness. From its narrow slits, red eyes glowed. "You're late, Toa." The crushing voice echoed through the dark cave. It was low and mighty, like the rumble of a volcano before an eruption. "Your friends are already dead, and you will soon join them." Akmu stepped forward, drawing his black sword. He was not afraid. His walk was confident and knowing. He approached the dark figure and turned his back to it, pointing the sword at the Toa Mata Y team. "My servant brought you to me without much trouble. He did his duty. His duty is to serve the darkness, and the darkness is me." The Toa Mata Y knew there was no point in waiting for the Mata X team. They were probably already dead. There was no retreat. This path would be closed off. So they had to face the battle. Espiritus's blades lit up with crimson light, glowing white-hot. A wave of wine kicked up dust and scattered stones from the floor, a lightning strike, directly at Makuta. In that instant, he vanished, as if he melted into his own shadow. Only the heavy hum remained in the air, laughing. Before the Toa stood only the Toa of shadows. The darkness around swirled, breathing. Akmu stood in the center of the hall, darkness radiating from his body, and in his hand was a black blade, as if forged from the night itself. Three duplicates appeared behind him, distorted copies, slightly dimmer, slightly slower, but with the same predatory gleam in their eyes. The Toa Mata Y stood in a semicircle, a single glance, and the battle began. As Ltu rushed forward first, Kakama flared on his face, and his silhouette blurred into a streak of light. He crashed into one of the duplicates, who didn't even have time to raise his blade. The strike, a wave of sound, shredded him to pieces of shadow. Lee activated Motric. Two more versions of her appeared beside her, identical copies, with the same plasma rifles. They spread out, started shooting at the shadows, distracting them and cornering them. One of the copies distracted the second duplicate while the mainly delivered a precise shot to the center of its chest. Another shadow disintegrated. Spiritus pressed against a column, her faxon mask glowing pale blue. Her body shivered for a moment and disappeared. At that same moment, Akmu threw a dark blade at her, but the weapon passed through the emptiness. The girl reappeared behind him in the darkness and unleashed an electric vortex on the last clone. Crouch swung his sword, his krill flared with light, and sparks ran down the handle. He restored a damaged column, which had collapsed long ago, and it stood between Vildar and the enemy strike like a shield. Then he helped the wounded copy of Lee rise after it fell, touching her. The wounds instantly healed, and her armor appeared newer than it was before the battle. Elsa activated Fellness. In the chaos of the fight, she crept closer and touched Akmu as he prepared to create another copy. In that moment, his mask jerked. A weak discharge shot out of it. The separation ability was disabled. He roared, hitting her with darkness, but this time it wasn't a shadow strike, it was pure fury. Elsa quickly raised a shield against his attack. A huge green palm leaf appeared from her hands. Vildar teleported right to the ceiling. From the shadows, he fell down with the force of lightning. Akmu managed to leap aside, but the energy pierced the ground beside him. An explosion, a wave of light, a hit to the legs. Akmu was knocked back, but quickly got back on his feet. He was alone, 1 against 6. His mask no longer worked. He was tired. The darkness wouldn't obey him. The black Toa growled and charged in close combat. The blade struck Azul, but it was blocked by Crouch. At that moment, Spiritus vanished into the shadows and appeared behind him, delivering a slicing blow with her blades. Akmu screamed in pain. Elsa had already raised her hand. Vines, dark and strong like ropes, shot out from the floor and walls. They twisted his legs and arms, then yanked him down with force. He collapsed, screaming, the sword falling from his hands. Lee stepped forward, plasma flaring in her rifle, brighter than the sun. One precise shot, the Vihu mask flew off Akmu's head, and at that moment, 2 copies of Lee simultaneously shot at the mask, and it disintegrated in the air, as if it had never existed. The Toe of Darkness screamed at the top of his lungs. The sound of his scream filled the empty, gloomy hall. Akmu, crying from the searing pain, fell to the stone floor, writhing. A brief flash of light, and in that same instant, the Toa turned into an ordinary Matoran. His armor turned brown and fleshy, and instead of a terrifying predatory look, there was a small, helpless creature. Spiritus, with a gust of wind, sent the lifeless body to the wall. It crashed into the stone with a dull thud, leaving a small mark on the surface. "Scratcha suit him," said the Toa of Atmosphere sternly. And suddenly, the darkness split with laughter. Makuta couldn't contain himself. Suddenly, tentacles burst from his body, as if they were emerging from the dark depths of his essence, attacking with such speed that their movements were only blurred shadows. They pierced the space, twisting and shaking the columns around. Each touch made the stones crack. Spiritus was the first to feel Makuta's wrath. Sending another gust of wind towards the Master of Shadows, one of the tentacles struck her back with such force that it threw her into the air, and she crashed to the stone floor with a crash. Pain pierced her body, but she gritted her teeth and jumped up, trying to stand before she would become an easy target for another strike. But at that moment, her friends were fighting nearby, not letting Makuta claim victory. Crouch, with his golden sword, immediately reacted to every wound. In his hands, the power of alloy and forging shone, and he used the mask's power, rapidly approaching the wounded, patching up their armor. He didn't stop working when one after another, Makuta's attacks left his comrades on the brink of death. Lee, endlessly dodging and tumbling, repeatedly used her rifle to shoot plasma, attacking Makuta from a distance, but the monster was too powerful. Every shot bounced off his shadow, creating bright flashes. The villain turned and attacked Vildar. His dark tentacles coiled around him like flexible predatory snakes, squeezing his body. He tried to break free, but at that moment, the tentacles squeezed tighter, and his body cracked, weakening his fighting ability. "Don't give up," shouted Crouch, throwing his sword toward Vildar and strengthening his defense with his power. Azul raised his hands, his eyes glowing from concentrated energy, and he released a massive sound wave that rippled across the hall. It was a powerful weapon, capable of shaking the earth itself. With a scream, Makuta released Viltar, and the toe of energy threw the sword back to Krah. "Thank you, brothers. I owe you." The wave smashed the stone columns, and they began to collapse, dust falling. Makuta, distracted by holding up the ceiling and walls, began to tremble, and his dark tentacles grew thinner and weaker. Krah used this moment to weaken his armor as much as possible. It became as thin as the leaves of a plant. Espiritus used all of her strength to summon the most powerful hurricane, Viltar, accumulating so much energy that his armor began to glow with white light, released all of his energy into the enemy. He knew he risked dying from overexertion, but if he didn't deliver a crushing blow now, all his friends might perish. The energy impulse exploded from his body with such force that the surrounding darkness disappeared for a moment, and the entire cave was filled with light, as if the sun had exploded right before them. The blast pierced Makuta. The strike was so powerful that Makuta's armor shattered into hundreds of pieces. At that same moment, Lee shot her most powerful blast from her rifle. The plasma strike added more power to the destruction. A terrible scream echoed across the entire EU mountain. The deadly plasma whirlwind tore through the space, sucking in hundreds of pieces of Makuta's body. His power was so overwhelming that the Toa could barely stay on their feet. Elsa pressed her hands to the floor, and the vines that emerged wrapped around the hero's legs, holding them tightly in place. Silence. Only the bright white light, dazzling, as if the essence of light itself had blinded everyone. Everything around them darkened. The wine disappeared as if it had never existed, and the noise, which had previously sounded like a deadly roar, vanished. Time seemed to freeze. The Toa Mata appeared on the shore. Before them lay a barren island. Sand and steppe, scorched fields stretched to the horizon, burnt vegetation, and ruined houses. All that surrounded the heroes was a misty, lifeless void. "Where are we?" Espiritus' voice trembled, her breath heavy. They all looked around, not understanding what had happened. This is not Mata Nui," said Krah, his gaze tense. We shouldn't be here. Were we teleported?" "It wasn't me," smirked Viltar, but there was worry in his voice. "We can't contact Artaka," Espiritus concluded. "The device is broken. We were teleported to an unfamiliar place. And we don't know if Makuta is live." "This can't be a coincidence," said Lee, her voice stern and determined. "What if it is?" said Krah. "What if we were sent here on purpose?" "I don't believe this is the end," added Esldu, his hands clenched into fists. "He can't just disappear. Makuta always comes back. We can't waste time thinking about it," said Elsa, her voice firm. "We need to act. It's important to understand where we are and how to return." "Yes, we need to understand what's going on here," agreed Viltar, tightening his grip on his energy sword. "It's time to start exploring. Even if we don't know what's waiting for us, we can't just sit and wait. We can't let the darkness defeat us." Espiritus looked around at her companions, her gaze full of resolve despite the gravity of the situation. She stepped forward, gathering her strength. "For now, we'll rest a bit," she said, her voice calm. "And even if this island keeps its secret, we will find a way to return home." They were silent for a few seconds, but then one by one, the heroes nodded, ready for the new journey they were about to face. "We are the Toa Mata," said Krah, his voice confident despite everything that had happened. "And we won't give up." With these words, they moved across the scorched land, confident that no matter how hard it would be, they would continue the fight. Note: image and description of the Rahinuajaga. Huge, cunning creatures with bodies covered in thick armor of various colors, shimmering in the shadows. Their long limbs end in massive pincers, and their enormous tails have stingers capable of paralyzing prey with a single strike. Nuajaga attack suddenly, moving almost silently across cliffs, deserts, and thickets. These dangerous predators possess a complex intellect and often act in packs, hunting together. It is believed that some of them once guarded the ancient shrines of Mata Nui, but now they are driven only by instinct and the darkness that has filled the island. Nuirama, huge flying insects with transparent wings. Their bodies have coloring that depends on their habitat and are protected by a tough exoskeleton. Nuirama patrol the area, attacking intruders from the air by grabbing them with enormous claws or stinging them with their tails. They act in unison, like one whole, obeying the mysterious call of the hive. Their attacks are swift but predictable if you manage to spot the shadow in the foliage. Nuikapan, a dangerous rakshi living in caves. It moves at incredible speed on powerful wings, with four clawed legs. It uses these legs to grab prey, and its exoskeleton is strong enough to withstand many direct strikes. It attacks from ambush, hiding in the dark. It can control the behavior of Nuirama. It is still unknown why they obey. The Rakshi is well armored and incredibly agile, especially in its own environment. Muaka, a large and powerful predator that lives in the snowy mountains and jungles. It moves on two legs, with the back of its body resembling a massive caterpillar, allowing the muaka to grip surfaces and make deadly lurches. It has an extendable neck that enables it to attack enemies from a distance. Very aggressive, it has powerful jaws and a roar that can frighten off other creatures. It often patrols its own territory and attacks anyone it considers a threat or prey. Kikanalo, large, strong, and peaceful Rakshi living in the fields and semi-deserts of Mata Nui. These creatures have powerful hind legs and sturdy bodies, making them ideal for carrying heavy loads across rough terrain. Their backs are covered in thick, gray-brown armor, and their wide snouts give them a somewhat stern but friendly appearance. The Pomatoran used Kikanalo as pack animals, especially in quarries and for transporting carved statues and large blocks of protodermis. Despite their size and strength, Kikanalo are extremely peaceful and rarely engage in conflict unless provoked. They are sensitive to noise and danger and have a herd protection instinct. If one Kikanalo in a group gets scared, the others may flee. Hapuak, these Rakshi resemble dogs or wolves in behavior and appearance. These animals have keen senses of smell and hearing, which is why they are sometimes used as guard or search animals. Hapuak are loyal and intelligent, often acting in packs, and can signal the approach of a threat. They can make a distinctive bark that can be heard from hundreds of meters away and are not afraid to defend their territory from small Rakshi or even individual predators. Some Matoran have claimed that Hapuak can recognize the emotions of creatures they interact with and even remember friends and foes. Though they lack speech like the Kivi or some of the intelligent Rakshi, they can learn simple commands. Fikua, dangerous Rakshi resembling tree spiders, usually found on the vines of Lawahi, the shoots of Lametru, and Onu Metru. They are orange and black, with the orange variant being more common. A variety with pincers and a stinger has been spotted on Voyanui. Fikua communicate using chirping sounds. They are best known for weaving incredibly complex webs near the ground and suddenly leaping out to ambush passing prey. Kane Ra, a powerful and stubborn Rakshi resembling a massive bull. These creatures graze on open plains and in sparse forests, moving slowly but steadily. Their bodies are covered in tough protodermis armor, which makes them nearly invulnerable to small predators. Kainera are known for their strength and aggressive response to threats. When danger strikes, they can charge with a fierce tackle, easily overturning small structures and knocking over other Rakshi or careless travelers. Kainera prefer to stay in small herds, led by the oldest and strongest bull. Despite their fierce appearance, these creatures are generally peaceful and feed on roots, leaves, and grass. Their snorting and stomping often serve as sound markers for travelers in the jungles of Lawahi. Some Pokoro Matoran have attempted to tame Kainera as pack animals, but no attempt has ever been successful, as Kainera are too stubborn and unpredictable to trust even the most patient trainers. Kava, very fast and generally peaceful, but they will engage in battle if threatened. Ashbear, Grolok, Ashbears were at least 2 to 3 times larger than Matoran and extremely strong. They had large jaws and sharp claws. They were usually peaceful unless their territory was threatened. Invented. Saraki, a tree snake, about 3 meters long, with a flexible body covered in dark green and black armor that resembles twisted foliage. It has a wide triangular head with 2 menacingly curved horns on the sides, which actually serve to collect fruits from trees. Its eyes glow red, although this is merely a reflection of light. It has poor vision. Saraki is not venomous, but its spiked tail looks as if it could pierce toe armor. In reality, they are used to fend off predatory rahi. When moving, it glides silently like a flowing liquid. During the day, it often curls up into a ring on a high branch. Sometimes, it can be seen calmly chewing fruit. Very territorial, it dislikes intrusions into its crown area. It never strikes first, but if it senses danger, it emits a sharp sound pulse that temporarily deafens its target. Kaivaris, graceful but annoying bird like rahi, inhabiting the coastal regions of Mata Nui and other oceanic islands. Their wings are covered with flexible feather-like protodermis plates that shimmer in shades of silver and turquoise. These creatures can soar over the water for hours, searching for small fish and debris washed ashore. Their beaks, made of durable onyx protodermis, can easily crack open shells and other natural containers, which is why K-Ivorus often hunt unattended prey left by Matoran. K-Ivorus emit a piercing, mocking cry and can gather in flocks of several dozen individuals, especially near harbors or fishing rafts. Some villages, like Gakoro, consider them sacred messengers of the great spirits, while in other regions, they are seen as annoying pests. Legends say that once K-Ivorus warned the ancient Toa about an approaching storm, flying in circles and making noise to disrupt the peace of the village. Despite their small size, K-Ivorus can be dangerous in a flock, especially if they feel their nests are threatened. Their claws are sharp, and their cry can temporarily deafen, acting as a primitive acoustic pulse.